When I was in ninth grade, I came home from school and noticed that my mother had left the laundry basket on my bed. It was her signal for me to put the clothes away in my drawers and bring down any dirty clothes I had. I started to put everything away, but when I came across one of my older sister Gil's panties, I couldn't resist holding them in my hand and feeling their silky texture. As a typical ninth grader, my mind raced with naughty thoughts, and I found myself wanting to try them on to see how they felt. I locked my door, closed all the shades, and put them on. The feeling was so different from what I usually wore, and I couldn't resist wearing them for the rest of the day. One night, when we were all going out to dinner to celebrate my father's birthday, I wore the panties under my clothes without anyone knowing. I was excited all night, and the thought of wearing panties just like the waitress serving us made it all the more thrilling. Days passed, and I found myself wearing Gil's undergarments more and more often. It was so exciting that I started to push the envelope and try something more daring. I snuck into Gil's room when no one was home, dug through her underwear drawer, and found one of her bras. I stuffed it with some of my socks and put it on, wearing it under a white t-shirt. It was so exciting, and I almost came in my pants. But I felt ashamed and embarrassed at the same time. I knew I was hooked and would do it again, so I kept wearing Gil's undergarments every day. I even wore her panties to bed one night, but they were starting to smell, so I reluctantly put them in the wash. I waited a few days and then dug through Gil's drawers when I had a chance to find them or a similar pair. I've also found an old pair of my mom's shoes that I could barely get on, but they were too small. As time went by, I kept dressing up, sometimes just with the panties and sometimes in a full outfit. I even stole a pair of pantyhose from the laundry room and started wearing those too. The cotton crotch turned me on for some reason. I wanted more though, so I started wearing one of Gil's blouses and an old red plaid skirt of hers that she didn't wear anymore. I loved the feeling of the soft material swishing against my pantyhose and sending shivers up and down my spine. It turned me on so much. One day, even in full dress, it didn't seem like enough. I wanted more. Nobody was home, so for the first time, I left my room dressed as a girl. I was so afraid that someone would look in the windows and see me, but I got into Gil's room safely and took a couple of her dresses. It felt wonderful when I was fully dressed, and I read a book on my bed like a girl would. I slid forward a bit and felt some warmth between my legs. I moved back and forth a couple of times, and then I climaxed. It was stupid of me, but thinking of myself as a girl made me really turned on and made me climax so easily. I was excited but felt guilty and ashamed. After rummaging through my sister's closet, I found many blouses, skirts, and dresses. I even found a wig and tried it on. It was a little too big for my head, but it looked pretty good. I twirled in front of the mirror, feeling more feminine than ever before. But just as I was about to take off the wig and change back into my regular clothes, I heard the front door open. My heart leaped into my throat. Someone was home. I quickly gathered up the clothes and wig and hid them under the bed. I took off the dress and slipped into my jeans just as my mom came up the stairs. "Hey, Jack," she said, smiling at me. "How was your day?" "Fine," I said, trying to sound casual. "Where's Gil?" she asked. "I don't know," I said, shrugging. "Maybe she's out with her friends." My mom nodded and went into her bedroom. I breathed a sigh of relief and quickly put everything back where I found it. After that close call, I decided to be more careful. I still dressed up in secret, but only when I was sure no one else was home. I even started buying my own panties and bras online, so I wouldn't have to keep stealing my sister's. But as much as I enjoyed dressing up, I couldn't help feeling guilty about it. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stop myself. And as time went on, I started to crave it more and more. It was like a drug, and I was addicted. Eventually, I started experimenting with makeup. I bought some cheap eyeshadow and lipstick and practiced applying it in secret. I even started plucking my eyebrows to make them thinner and more feminine. It was a dangerous game, and I knew it. But I couldn't help myself. I was in too deep. And as much as I tried to resist, I knew that I would keep dressing up in secret for as long as I could get away with it. Ethan always felt like he was leading a double life. During the day, he was a typical college student attending lectures and participating in discussions. But at night, he would slip into a secret world where he could be himself. He loved to cross-dress, put on his girl clothes, and enjoy feeling like a different person. He had always been a little self-conscious about his appearance, but with his girl clothes on, he felt like he could conquer the world. One of his favorite places to go was the college library. It was a place where he could be alone, and he would regularly go into a quiet corner and slip into his girl clothes. The library had a number of small study rooms, each with an individual study desk and sides that provided some privacy. Ethan would sit down at one of these desks and do his studying while cross-dressed. It was a quiet and peaceful place, and he felt safe and comfortable there. However, there were times when his peaceful study sessions were interrupted. Occasionally, someone would come into the room to study, and Ethan would have to sit there until they left or risk being seen. People were less tolerant back then, and Ethan was afraid of what might happen if someone discovered his secret. He would sit nervously at his desk, trying to look as normal as possible, hoping that the other person would leave soon. One day, someone asked him for a pen, and Ethan's heart began to race. He didn't want to reveal his secret, but he also didn't want to seem rude. He hesitantly reached into his bag and handed the pen to the person, holding his breath as he did so. The person thanked him and went back to their own study. Ethan was relieved, but also a little disappointed that he didn't have the chance to show off his cross-dressed appearance. Despite the occasional interruption, Ethan continued to go to the library and cross-dress while studying. It was a place where he could be himself, and he loved the freedom and excitement that came with it. He would twirl around in front of the mirror, admiring the way his skirt flowed around him, feeling confident and proud of who he was. The thrill of cross-dressing and studying at the library was not enough for Ethan. He wanted to take things further, to express himself more fully, so he started to experiment with makeup and wigs. He would spend hours in front of the mirror, trying different looks, different colors, and different styles. At first, Ethan was nervous about being caught. He was afraid that someone would see him, that they would judge him, or worse, that they would tell others. But as he continued to explore his cross-dressing, he found that he was becoming more confident, more comfortable in his own skin. Ethan started to wear his girl clothes and makeup outside of his home, going to the mall or the park. He was always careful, always looking over his shoulder, but he was also exhilarated. He felt like he was leading a double life, and he loved it. One day, Ethan decided to take the ultimate step and go out in public as a girl. He chose a cute summer dress, a blonde wig, and applied his makeup with care. He was nervous but also excited. He took a deep breath and stepped outside, ready to face the world. As he walked down the street, Ethan felt a rush of adrenaline. He was amazed at how different the world looked through his new eyes. He was no longer invisible, no longer just another guy in the crowd. He was a girl, and everyone was looking at him. Ethan's love for cross-dressing continued to grow, and he found himself slipping into his girl clothes more and more often. He would spend hours in front of the mirror, perfecting his makeup and hair and admiring himself. He loved how he looked and how he felt when he was dressed as a girl. He felt more confident and free, and he was finally able to express himself in a way that he never could before. One day, Ethan made the decision to take the next step and go out in public dressed as a girl. He put on his best dress and shoes, a wig, and applied his makeup with care. When he was finished, he looked in the mirror and was shocked at how beautiful he looked. He felt like a completely different person, and he was ready to face the world. Ethan walked out of his apartment and started down the street. His heart raced with excitement and nervousness. He was amazed at how comfortable he felt in his own skin, and he couldn't help but smile as he walked. People were looking at him, but he didn't care. He was finally able to be himself, and he was going to enjoy every moment of it. As the years went by, Ethan became more confident in his cross-dressing. He started to wear more elaborate outfits and even began wearing makeup and a wig. He would often go to the library in full attire, not just to study, but also to express himself and feel free in his own skin. People were more accepting of his lifestyle now, and he was even complimented on his fashion choices. He had found a community of like-minded individuals, and he was no longer ashamed of who he was. One day, Ethan was at the library surrounded by his friends and fellow cross-dressers. They were laughing and chatting, enjoying each other's company and discussing their latest fashion finds. Suddenly, one of the librarians approached the group and asked if they would like to participate in a fashion show at the library. Ethan was hesitant at first, but his friends encouraged him to do it. They said that it would be a great opportunity to show the world that there was more to them than just their clothing, and that they should be proud of who they were. Ethan agreed, and the group participated in the fashion show. It was a huge success, and people from all over the city came to see it. Ethan walked down the runway, wearing a stunning red gown and a beautiful wig. He felt like a queen, and the audience was cheering and clapping for him. He finally felt like he had found his place in the world. In the end, Ethan's loved ones were incredibly supportive. They told him that they loved him no matter what, and that they would always be there for him. From that day forward, Ethan was finally able to be himself. He was no longer hiding who he was, and he was finally able to live life on his own terms. He was proud of who he was, and he wouldn't change a thing. As Jack grew up, he always felt like he was different from the other boys. While they enjoyed sports and rough and tumble play, Jack preferred quieter hobbies like drawing and reading. Unfortunately, this made him the target of teasing from his older brothers and cousins, who would mock him for being too sensitive or too girly. Even his own mother made comments about him needing to toughen up if he wanted to be taken seriously in life. At first, Jack tried to brush off the teasing and ignore the comments. But over time, the constant taunting wore him down. He felt like he was trapped in a body that didn't fit, and he didn't know how to escape. He started to question himself and wondered if there was something truly wrong with him. One day, Jack's curiosity got the better of him, and he snuck into his mother's closet to try on some of her clothes. He was fascinated by the way the high heels made him look taller and more graceful, and he felt a newfound confidence that he had never experienced before. He started to enjoy the way he felt when he was dressed up, and he didn't want that feeling to end. When his mother suggested they go shopping for a new dress for him, Jack was hesitant at first, but the excitement building up inside of him was too strong to resist, and he agreed to go. When they arrived at the store, he was in awe of all the colors and styles to choose from. His mother helped him pick out the perfect dress, a beautiful blue one with a full skirt and a bow in the back. When he looked in the mirror, he was amazed at what he saw. He looked like a completely different person, and he loved it. This was Jack's moment of discovery. He loved being dressed up as a girl, and he was going to enjoy every moment of it. He finally realized that he didn't have to conform to the expectations of others, and that he could be true to himself. So he decided to take things to the next level and embrace his new identity as a cross-dresser. Jack started experimenting with his mother's clothes, trying out different styles and looks. He found that he really enjoyed the process of getting dressed up and loved how it made him feel. One day, he came across a local cross-dressing community and was thrilled to find that there were others like him. He started attending their events and meeting other cross-dressers who were supportive and accepting of him. They taught him about makeup, fashion, and how to walk in heels. Jack felt like he had finally found a place where he belonged and was able to be himself without judgment. As Jack continued to explore his new identity, he became more confident and daring. He started to dress up more frequently, even venturing outside of his house in full cross-dressing attire. He found that the world was a lot more accepting than he had initially thought, and he received compliments and admiration from strangers. He was finally living life on his own terms, and he felt happy and fulfilled. Jack's mom was his biggest supporter, always encouraging him to be true to himself and embrace his love for cross-dressing. One day, Jack gathered the courage to go to a local cross-dressing meetup group. He was nervous at first, but as soon as he arrived, he felt a sense of belonging. He met other people who were just like him, and they welcomed him with open arms. They showed him new styles and gave him tips on how to make his outfits even better. Finally, Jack realized that he didn't have to be ashamed of his love for cross-dressing. He learned to embrace it and find confidence in his own skin. He stopped caring about what others thought of him and started living life. Jack had finally found his true self through cross-dressing and was living his life with a newfound sense of confidence and freedom. He no longer felt ashamed of who he was and was proud of the person he had become. With the support of his mother and his community, he continued to explore his love for cross-dressing and became more and more daring in his outfits. As time went on, Jack's confidence grew, and he began to experiment with more daring looks. He would wear bold colors and patterns, and even started wearing high heels regularly. He learned to walk confidently in them, and loved the way they made him feel taller and more elegant. He also started wearing makeup more often and learned how to apply it to accentuate his features. Jack's love for cross-dressing even spilled over into his professional life. He started dressing up in feminine outfits to work, and surprisingly, his colleagues were supportive and accepting of him. He received compliments on his outfits, and some even asked him for fashion advice. Jack realized that people were more accepting than he had initially thought, and that being true to himself was the best thing he could do. In the local cross-dressing community, Jack became a role model for others who were struggling with their own identities. He was always willing to lend a listening ear and offer advice to those who needed it. He helped others to embrace their love for cross-dressing and to find the confidence to be themselves. Jack found a sense of purpose in helping others and was proud of the impact he was making in the lives of those around him. Through his journey of self-discovery, Jack learned that being true to oneself is the key to happiness. He found his passion in cross-dressing and embraced it with open arms. He learned to ignore the negative comments of others and instead focused on the positive feedback he received from those who supported him. Jack's story serves as an inspiration to others who may be struggling to find their true selves, and he remains a shining example of confidence, bravery, and self-love. Gloria was in a loving relationship with Eric, her boyfriend of 3 years. They were each other's everything, and their relationship was built on trust and honesty. However, one day, while tidying up Eric's closet, Gloria stumbled upon a secret that would shake the foundation of their relationship. She found a long, silky skirt in a deep shade of purple, unlike anything Eric had ever worn. Gloria was shocked and couldn't understand why her boyfriend would have a skirt in his closet. She felt like she had been hit in the stomach, and her thoughts raced with possibilities of infidelity and deceit. She was left feeling confused and hurt, unable to comprehend why the person she loved and trusted the most could be hiding something from her. Gloria confronted Eric, who was sitting on the couch watching TV, holding up the skirt and demanding an explanation. Eric's expression changed from calm to panic as he saw the skirt in Gloria's hands. Gloria accused him of cheating, and Eric struggled to find an explanation. He tried to reassure her, but Gloria was inconsolable. She felt like her world had been turned upside down, and she couldn't understand why Eric would keep something like this from her. Over the next few days, Gloria struggled to shake off the feeling of betrayal and confusion. She didn't know what to make of the skirt that she had found in Eric's closet, and she couldn't help but think that he was keeping secrets from her. On their next date, Gloria confronted Eric about the skirt. They were sitting in a quiet Italian restaurant, sipping red wine and picking at their pasta when she finally mustered up the courage to speak. "Eric, I need to talk to you about something," she said, her voice quivering slightly. Eric's expression changed, and for a moment, Gloria thought that she had finally uncovered his secret. But instead of confessing, he simply looked down at his plate and pushed his food around with his fork. Gloria's heart sank. "Eric, please talk to me," she said. "I need to know what's going on." For a long time, Eric was silent, and Gloria thought that he was going to brush her off and refuse to talk. But then he took a deep breath and looked up at her. "Gloria, I have something to tell you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm addicted to cross-dressing." Gloria's eyes widened in shock, and for a moment, she was speechless. She had never heard of such a thing before, and she had no idea how to react. "What do you mean you're addicted to cross-dressing?" she asked, her voice shaking. "It's something that I've been struggling with for a long time," Eric said. "I love wearing women's clothing, and it makes me feel beautiful and free, but I know that it's not socially acceptable, and I've been trying to hide it from everyone." After Gloria found out about Eric's addiction to cross-dressing, she was feeling confused and unsure of what to do. She loved Eric deeply, but the thought of him cross-dressing was unsettling to her. She decided to talk to some of her close friends about it to get a different perspective. Gloria read articles, watched videos, and even joined online forums where people openly discussed their experiences with cross-dressing. The more she learned, the more she began to realize that it was a legitimate form of self-expression and a way for people to express their gender identity. With a newfound understanding and acceptance of cross-dressing, Gloria felt more confident in her relationship with her boyfriend. She was still a little uneasy about the idea, but she was willing to work through her feelings and support her boyfriend in his journey. Gloria set up a date with Eric to talk things over and see where they stood. They met at a quiet park, sitting on a bench and looking out at the calm lake. She took a deep breath and started the conversation. "I want to talk about what happened," she said. "I've been doing some research, and I want to understand more about cross-dressing and why it's important to you." Her boyfriend looked relieved and grateful for her willingness to listen. "It's a part of who I am," he said. "It's not something I can ignore or hide away. Wearing women's clothing makes me feel beautiful and confident. It's a way for me to express my gender identity." Gloria listened as her boyfriend opened up to her, sharing his experiences and feelings. She could see the passion and love in his eyes as he spoke, and she knew that this was a part of him that she needed to accept and embrace. By the end of the conversation, Gloria and her boyfriend had both come to a new understanding and acceptance of each other. They left the park with a renewed commitment to their relationship, ready to navigate the challenges that lay ahead. As the days passed, Gloria and Eric talked more and more about his cross-dressing. Eric was finally able to open up to her about the reason why he had always felt drawn to women's clothing and why it was such an important part of his life. Gloria was able to understand and accept Eric's feelings, and they were able to move forward as a couple. However, the road ahead was not always easy. There were still many people in their lives who did not understand or accept Eric's cross-dressing, and the couple faced many challenges as they tried to navigate these relationships. But despite the difficulties, Gloria and Eric remained committed to each other, and they supported each other through it all. As they worked through their challenges, Gloria and Eric came to appreciate each other even more. Gloria learned to love and accept all parts of Eric, including his cross-dressing, and Eric learned to be more open and confident about his true self. They found that their love for each other was stronger than ever and that nothing could stand in their way. One day, Gloria and Eric decided to take a trip to a cross-dressing retreat where Eric could fully embrace his love for women's clothing in a supportive and accepting environment. They had an amazing time, and Gloria was struck by how happy and free Eric was when he was cross-dressed. As they returned home from their trip, Gloria and Eric knew that they had found a new level of understanding and acceptance for each other. They were more in love than ever, and they were excited for their future together. From that day forward, Gloria and Eric remained steadfast in their love for each other, and they faced whatever challenges came their way with determination and understanding. They proved to everyone that love truly knows no bounds, and that there is nothing that can stand in the way of two people who are meant to be together. I once had the responsibility of watering my friend's plants while he was away with his wife. It was a Friday evening, and around 5 p.m., I visited the plants and noticed that the pots were still in the sun. So I decided to wait until they were in the shade before watering them. While I was tending to the plants, I couldn't help but notice how attractive my friend's wife Barbara was. She was slim and beautiful, and I couldn't help but think that my friend was lucky to be with her. However, I had heard rumors that Barbara had cheated on my friend with younger men. Whenever I saw her, she seemed to be flirting with me and making prolonged eye contact, which made me feel sexually aroused despite being over 50 years old. Barbara was still a very sexy woman, and I couldn't stop myself from wondering what was in her lingerie drawer. The thought had been gnawing at me for days, and I couldn't shake it off. I guess I had built up an image of Barbara being a bit of a cougar. I had heard stories of her wild nights out and her love for all things sensual, but I had never seen any evidence of it. I knew my friend's bedroom was in the loft, so I headed up there. My heart was pounding with excitement and anticipation as I searched for something to wear. It wasn't long before I had found a sexy pair of sheer-to-waist pantyhose, a little red sparkly sleeveless cocktail dress, some cute sling-back heels with peeped toes, and joy of joys, a pretty shoulder-length dark brown wig. I quickly stripped off the summer shorts and t-shirt I was wearing and slipped the pantyhose up my smooth legs. I felt the silky nylon encase me, hugging my skin and accentuating my curves. The sensation was exhilarating, and I couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement. I put on one of Barbara's bras and padded it out to give me a more feminine silhouette. I then slipped on the red dress, feeling the soft fabric cling to my body. The dress was a perfect fit, and I couldn't help but admire myself in the mirror. I then put on the heels, feeling a sense of transformation as my figure was instantly changed. The heels fixed a different profile to my outline, and I could see the difference in my posture and walk. I couldn't believe my luck. I had found the perfect outfit to make me feel like a woman. I had always been curious about women's clothing, and now I finally had the chance to experience it for myself. I put on some makeup, carefully applying foundation, blush, and mascara to accentuate my features. I then positioned my hairdo, which I dislike calling a wig, but it is necessary for me to wear one. I styled it in a way that made me feel confident and beautiful. As I looked at myself in the mirror, I couldn't help but feel incredibly pleased with the way I looked. I felt like a whole new person. I then took selfie after selfie, capturing the moment and the way I felt. It was extra thrilling knowing I was wearing Barbara's things. I had borrowed some of her clothes and accessories, and I couldn't help but wonder if my friend might prefer how I looked in the outfit rather than Barbara. That led me to thinking about the possibility of being in a threesome with them, and I don't need to tell you what effect that had on a certain part of my body. So I felt compelled to pleasure myself accordingly. As always, the dressed-up episode had to come to an end. After an hour or so, I was putting Barbara's items away where I had found them. I carefully folded her clothes, but alas, I was lucky that he didn't catch me. As I watered the plants, my mind was still reeling from the experience I had just had. I couldn't stop thinking about how it felt to be dressed up as a woman and how it made me feel more alive than I had felt in years. It was as if I had finally found a way to express a part of myself that had been hidden away for far too long. As I drove home, I couldn't help but wonder if I would ever have the opportunity to do it again. The thrill of wearing women's clothing and the possibility of being caught had given me a rush that I couldn't shake off. I felt more alive than I had felt in years. Over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about the possibility of being caught by Barbara's brother or my friend. I wondered what would happen if they found out that I had borrowed Barbara's clothes and dressed up as a woman. Would they be shocked, disgusted, or accepting of my desires? I didn't know, but the idea of finding out excited me. Eventually, my friend returned from his trip, and I returned his key, never telling him about my experience with his wife's clothes. But the memory of that day has stayed with me ever since. It has made me more aware of my own desires and more willing to explore them. Looking back, I realized that what I did was wrong. I had invaded Barbara's privacy and used her belongings without her consent. But at the same time, it opened up a new world of possibilities for me. It helped me to understand myself better and to be more accepting of my own desires. In the end, I learned that sometimes it takes a daring move to discover who you truly are. And while I wouldn't recommend anyone else to do what I did, I'm grateful for the experience and the knowledge it has brought me. As I left the garden, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief that I had narrowly avoided being caught in the act. My heart was still pounding with excitement and anticipation, and I couldn't shake off the thrill of what had just happened. Over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about the experience. I found myself daydreaming about what it would be like to wear women's clothing again and to experience that rush of excitement and thrill. I knew that I had to find a way to do it again, even if it meant risking getting caught. A few weeks later, my friend Tino asked me if I could water his plants again while he was away on a business trip. I eagerly agreed, knowing that I would have the perfect opportunity to dress up once again. This time, I made sure to bring my own clothes and makeup, so I wouldn't have to borrow Barbara's things. As soon as I arrived at the house, I headed straight up to the loft and began to dress up. I put on a black lace bra and matching panties, a pair of sheer black stockings, and a black satin slip. I then slipped on a tight-fitting red dress that hugged my curves in all the right places. I completed the look with a pair of black patent leather heels and some carefully applied makeup. As I looked at myself in the mirror, I couldn't help but feel incredibly turned on by the sight of myself in women's clothing. I felt so sexy and feminine, and the sensation of the silky fabric against my skin was indescribable. I spent the next few hours taking selfies and admiring myself in the mirror, reveling in the feeling of being a woman. But as always, the experience had to come to an end, and I carefully put away my clothes and makeup, making sure to leave everything exactly as I found it. As I left the house, I couldn't help but feel a sense of disappointment that the experience was over. But at the same time, I knew that I would do it again in a heartbeat, no matter how risky it might be. From that day on, I found myself drawn to the idea of cross-dressing more and more. I began to explore my feminine side in secret, experimenting with different outfits and makeup looks, and even venturing out into public dressed as a woman. It was a risky and sometimes dangerous lifestyle, but I couldn't help myself. The feeling of being a woman was just too powerful to resist, and even now, years later, I still find myself drawn to the thrill of cross-dressing and the rush of excitement that comes with it. I am Eric, a successful business executive in one of the largest corporations in the world. I have everything I could ever want: a beautiful wife, a luxurious home, and a thriving career. However, all of that changed in an instant when I received a call from my boss regarding the company's largest client. "Eric, we have a situation. Our largest client is considering pulling out of their contract with us," he said, his voice tense. I was stunned. This client represented a significant portion of our company's revenue, and losing them would be a catastrophic blow. I asked what the problem was, and my boss hesitated before telling me the shocking news. They've expressed concerns about our commitment to diversity and inclusion. Apparently, they've noticed that our executive team is entirely made up of men, and they want to see some women in leadership positions, he said. I was stunned. This was the first time I'd ever heard of such a thing, and I couldn't believe that our lack of diversity was putting our business at risk. I asked what we could do to fix the problem, and my boss told me that we had just one chance to save the deal. "We need a woman to represent our company at the next meeting with the client, and since you're the one who will be leading the presentation, we need you to dress as a woman," he said matter-of-factly. I was horrified. I had never dressed as a woman before, and the thought of doing so in front of a room full of people was frightening. But I knew that I had to do whatever it took to save the company, so I agreed to do it, and my boss gave me a list of instructions on how to prepare. I was nervous as I shopped for women's clothing and had my hair and makeup done. I felt like a fraud, like I was betraying who I truly was, but as I stood in front of the mirror, staring at my reflection, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement as well. I was about to embark on an adventure, and I was going to do whatever it took to save the company and prove my commitment to diversity and inclusion. So, with a deep breath, I stepped out into the world, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The meeting with the client was scheduled for the next day, and I spent the entire night going over my presentation, trying to push the thought of having to dress as a woman out of my mind. I woke up early the next morning and started getting ready. I was nervous, but I was also determined to do whatever it took to save the company. As I got dressed, I couldn't help but feel self-conscious. I was used to wearing suits and ties, not dresses and heels, but I reminded myself of the importance of the meeting and pushed my nerves aside. I applied my makeup, put on my wig, and stepped out of the bathroom ready to face the day. My wife was waiting for me in the living room, and she looked shocked when she saw me. "Eric, is that really you?" she asked, her eyes wide. I nodded, feeling self-conscious all over again. "I have to do this to save the company," I said. She nodded, understanding. "You look amazing," she said, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. I arrived at the office and headed straight to the conference room where the meeting was being held. As I entered, I felt a sense of dread wash over me. The room was full of people, and I was about to present as a woman for the first time ever, but I pushed my nerves aside and stepped up to the podium, determined to do whatever it took to save the company. The presentation went better than I could have ever imagined. I was nervous at first, but as I started speaking, I found that I was able to connect with the client in a way that I never had before. They were impressed with my knowledge of the company and my commitment to diversity and inclusion, and by the end of the meeting, they had agreed to renew their contract. After the meeting, I was relieved and proud of myself, but I was also exhausted. The weight of the day's events was starting to take its toll on me, and I was grateful when the meeting was over. I returned to my office and started packing up my things, ready to go home and relax. But as I was leaving, my boss approached me. "Eric, I just wanted to say thank you. You saved the company today," he said, a sense of gratitude in his voice. I smiled, feeling proud of myself. "I'm just glad I could help," I said, and then headed home, ready to rest and reflect on the day's events. But as the days went by, I found myself becoming more and more fascinated with cross-dressing. I had always been a traditional man, content with my life as it was, but now I found myself wanting to explore this new side of myself. I started to wear women's clothing more frequently, experimenting with different styles and looks, and I found that I loved the way it made me feel. I was torn between my old life and this new one that was slowly taking hold of me. I was scared of what my wife and friends would think if they found out, but at the same time, I couldn't deny the thrill that I felt whenever I dressed as a woman. I started to attend events as a woman, and I was amazed by the positive attention I received. People were drawn to me. They found me charming and confident, and I couldn't help but feel flattered by the attention. And as I explored this new side of myself, I found that I was becoming more confident in my personal and professional life as well. I was taking on new challenges at work, and I was finding that I was more assertive and self-assured than ever before. But as much as I enjoyed my new life as a woman, I knew that it was a secret that I couldn't keep forever. I was afraid of the consequences of my actions, and I didn't know how I was going to explain my newfound love of cross-dressing to my wife and friends. But despite my fears, I found myself becoming more and more enamored with the life I was living, and I knew that I couldn't give it up. The experience of cross-dressing changed me in ways I never could have imagined. I was no longer the same person I was before, and I couldn't ignore the feelings of excitement and empowerment that had come with it. I found myself constantly thinking about the next time I could dress as a woman, and I was fascinated by the way it made me feel. But I also knew that I couldn't ignore my responsibilities as a husband and a business executive. I couldn't let this newfound passion consume me and risk everything I had worked so hard for. So I made a decision to keep it a secret, to lock it away, and only indulge in it privately. But I will never forget the journey I took and the person I became. I learned that true success isn't just about achieving your goals, but also about being true to yourself and embracing every aspect of who you are. And as I look back on my experience, I couldn't help but feel grateful for the opportunity to grow and evolve in ways I never thought possible. Brian had always felt like he didn't quite fit in with other men. Growing up, he would often sneak into his mother's closet to try on her dresses and high heels, relishing the feeling of excitement and joy it brought him. However, he knew that this was something he had to keep hidden from the world. As he got older, his love for women's clothing only grew stronger, and he found himself becoming increasingly restless, feeling like he was living a lie. Brian was terrified of being rejected or judged, so he kept his secret locked away deep inside him. Even his wife, Lucy, had no idea about his secret desires. He was afraid to share it with anyone, fearing that he would lose the love and respect of those closest to him. However, he knew that he couldn't continue living this way. He wanted to be true to himself and embrace his passion for cross-dressing. One day, Brian mustered up the courage to take a bold step. He went to a department store and purchased a beautiful dress and a pair of high heels. He was incredibly nervous, his hands shaking as he paid for his purchases, but he was also filled with a sense of excitement. Finally, he was going to be able to be himself, even if it was just for a few hours. When Brian returned home, he locked himself in his room and put on the dress and the high heels. Looking at himself in the mirror, he was shocked by what he saw. He looked beautiful, and he felt beautiful. For the first time in years, he felt happy and free. However, Brian's wife Lucy had been feeling suspicious of him for a while. He was often distant and would spend hours locked up in his study, leading her to believe he was having an affair. One day, she decided to confront him, and to her surprise, she found Brian dressed in women's clothing. At first, Lucy was taken aback, but as she looked into Brian's eyes, she could see the joy and confidence that cross-dressing brought him. Brian was hesitant at first, but he eventually opened up to her about his secret love for cross-dressing and how it had been a part of his life since he was a child. He also confessed that he had been cross-dressing in secret for years, afraid of what others would think of him. Lucy listened intently, and she could see the love and passion in Brian's eyes. She knew that cross-dressing brought him joy and happiness, and she didn't want him to be unhappy. She decided to support him in his passion and asked Brian to show her what he liked to wear and how he liked to dress up. With Lucy's support and encouragement, Brian gained the confidence to come out to his friends and family. He threw a party to reveal his true self, inviting all of his closest friends and family members. When they arrived, Brian greeted them in a beautiful blue ball gown and high heels. He looked stunning, and his friends and family were shocked but supportive. At the party, Brian spoke about his journey and how he had discovered his love for cross-dressing. He thanked Lucy for her love and support, and he praised her for being the most amazing wife anyone could ask for. Brian's friends and family were moved by his story, and they all embraced him with love and acceptance. The party was a huge success, and Brian felt free and happy. He no longer had to hide his passion, and he could finally be himself. He felt like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders, and he was grateful to have such an amazing and supportive wife by his side. As Brian's confidence grew, he began to explore different aspects of his passion for cross-dressing. He started to experiment with makeup and hairstyles, learning new techniques and perfecting his skills. He also began to attend drag shows, where he could express himself openly and meet others who shared his love for dressing up. At first, Brian was nervous about attending these events, worried about how he would be perceived and whether he would be accepted. But he quickly discovered that the drag community was a welcoming and inclusive space, filled with people who shared his passion and supported him in his journey of self-discovery. Brian's new friends encouraged him to participate in drag competitions, and he soon found himself competing in local contests, showcasing his unique style and flair. He won several prizes and gained a reputation as a talented and creative performer. Brian's journey of self-discovery was not always easy, but he never gave up. He continued to explore his passion for cross-dressing and drag, and he found fulfillment and joy in expressing himself in new and creative ways. Through it all, Brian's wife Lucy remained his steadfast supporter and ally. She was proud of her husband and inspired by his courage and determination. Together, they built a life filled with love, acceptance, and mutual respect. Brian's story is a powerful reminder of the importance of embracing who we truly are and of the transformative power of love and acceptance. His journey of self-discovery shows us that it is never too late to follow our hearts and pursue our passions, and that with the support of those we love, we can overcome any obstacle and live our lives to the fullest. Despite the acceptance and support he had received from his loved ones, Brian still faced challenges in expressing himself freely. He often received judgment and ridicule from strangers, and even from some members of his community. However, Brian refused to let these negative experiences bring him down. He continued to hold his head high and confidently embrace his love for cross-dressing. As he looked back on his journey, Brian knew that he wouldn't be where he was today without the love and support of his wife, Lucy. She had been his rock through the ups and downs, always there to provide a listening ear and a shoulder to lean on. Brian knew that he was lucky to have her in his life, and he never took her support for granted. In the end, Brian's journey taught him that being true to oneself is the most important thing in life. No matter what challenges he faced, he knew that he had the strength and resilience to overcome them. With his newfound confidence and sense of purpose, Brian continued to live life on his own terms, embracing his love for cross-dressing and spreading love and acceptance wherever he went. It was a Saturday evening at a club in Worthing, near the pier, where non-serious clubbers gather. I was there with Wendy and Gwen, dressed up and having the most thrilling evening of my life. It all began at my wife's birthday party, where I found myself seated next to our neighbor Wendy and her friend Gwen. They dared me to go out on a girls' night with them, disguised as a girl. I was nervous but couldn't resist the tremendous opportunity in front of me. The week was torture under the weight of expectation, balanced by the possibility of crushing disappointment if it didn't happen. I had to seek my wife's permission, and she understood it was something I wanted to do. She even purchased me some stockings and sewed the wonderful, sexy, and exquisite elbow-length gloves with a feather trim that I was slipping over my quivering hands as I got ready in Wendy's bedroom the following Friday. At the club, Wendy smirked mischievously at me and threatened to rip my wig off. Wendy and Gwen were having a great time with this, but I was terrified. I nervously made my way down the stairs, feeling excited but also terrified. Wendy had offered to lend me her room to get dressed up, and I had taken her up on the offer. As I made my way down the stairs, I was wearing a sparkly black bra that had padding to give the appearance of breasts, cream suspenders with frills and bows, and black stockings. I had on a dangerously short leopard print top and a skirt that barely covered my stocking tops. Wendy and Gwen were both laughing and taunting me, but also admiring my new look. They had done my makeup and hair and applied perfume liberally. I was ready to go out for a night on the town with no keys, no money, and no way home until my companions decided it was time. As we made our way to the club, I couldn't help but feel nervous about being noticed. But to my surprise, nobody seemed to be paying attention to me, at least not to my face. The British sense of restraint was on full display. However, as we entered the club, the DJ noticed me and began making comments about the beautiful girl who had just arrived. I was nervous, but I tried to go along with it. Wendy even arranged for me to win a bottle of champagne if I danced with her on stage in front of everyone. I was brought on stage and coerced into dancing with Wendy while Gwen took picture after picture. The smoke machine's breeze almost lifted my skirt to new heights when the fire alarm went off. Wendy then took that opportunity to remove my wig. I suggested we go somewhere else, but she refused. I grabbed my bottle of champagne, but we couldn't drink it because we were laughing so hard. As the alcohol flowed, any tension I had left vanished. From then on, it was non-stop. I found myself on the dance floor in the ladies' toilet with a Thai girl who thought I was very sexy. All of this is true. Back on stage, I was being chatted at by a very excited gay man from a hen night in Raleigh while dancing with Wendy, Gwen, and some other girls who were having more makeup and perfume applied. Then, Wendy suggested we go to the supermarket to buy some groceries. This was becoming very strange. We were walking around the 24-hour store in Worthing, in and out of the aisles, while Wendy searched for cheese and onion pasties and Gwen looked for sandwiches. After negotiating with a giggling girl on the till who could only just find the composure to scan the items we had purchased, I had to sit with the girls in full view of the late-night shoppers while they ate them. What a night for the store's employees. I was constantly made to feel like a princess, although a bad one who had to do what her evil aunts requested. Finally, at around 3 o'clock, I was dropped off at home, where we sat and joked and smiled over what a fantastic night it had been. If this were transvestite fiction, I think the kinky sex scene would be here. But there was none, just a peaceful ending to an exciting night. My wife was relieved to see me home unharmed and undamaged, but she found the whole affair amusing and wants to come out again next time. They'll absolutely go again, but maybe not to that club. The campus was famous for its Greek life, which meant that every weekend, the whole campus would light up with parties, and everyone would scramble to get into the most selective ones. As someone who loved parties, I had rushed a few frats during my freshman year. However, I didn't really look like the typical frat guy and felt that I was rejected from many of them because of my image. I was fairly skinny for my age, and I had grown out my hair to my shoulders. I had a feminine face and considered myself to be an introvert. I was not what a frat was looking for, but I wanted to get into their parties. Over the last year, I had tried many tactics to sneak into them, but everything failed. I had noticed that it was so easy for girls to get into parties, but guys were often pulled out of line and questioned if they were not part of the frat. My best friend Tana was in one of the top sororities, and she would tell me lots of stories of what happened at these parties. Tina was considered one of the most attractive girls at my school and could get into any party she wanted. She was athletic and had a very soft face. I had befriended her in my math class and helped her with tests and homework. I thought Tina was very pretty and had a crush on her for a while. I couldn't tell if she liked me back. I was planning on telling her soon, but kept putting it off. One of the most prestigious frats, Kappa Sig, was holding a big party this upcoming weekend, and almost all of my friends who were girls were going. I had tried to reach out for tickets, but I was ignored. The day before, I was getting lunch with Tina and voiced my frustration. It's just not fair. I wish I was a girl sometimes. You guys can get into these parties so easily. Tina smiled and said, being a girl is hard. There's a lot of preparation for these parties, and frat guys can be super creepy. I said, I don't care. I would do anything to get into one of these parties. Tina said, would you really do anything? I nodded. She said, well, I think I have an idea for how to get you into one, but we will need some supplies. I got excited and asked what the plan was. Tina said, don't worry about it. I will handle everything. Just promise me that you are down for whatever plan I have. After agreeing to Tina's plan, we parted ways shortly after lunch. The rest of the week flew by, and before I knew it, it was Friday. Tina texted me to meet her a few hours before the party at her apartment. I thought maybe she wanted help with one of her classes, so I packed my books and walked over. She was waiting for me in the lobby, and we both got in the elevator. I asked why I had to come so early. She said, well, we need time to prepare you for the party. I made a confused face and followed her into her apartment. We went to a room, and she told me to sit on her bed. This was the first time I had been in her room, and it was pretty nice, with decorations everywhere. It smelled strongly of perfume. Tina came up to me and asked me if I was ready to begin. I asked her what the plan was. She said, the plan is pretty simple. There's no way you're going to get into the party looking like that. Your only chance is to go in disguise. I frantically shook my head and got up to leave. There is no way I'm doing that, Tina. She moved close to me and put her arms around me. It felt good, but I was also nervous. She looked into my eyes and said, please, can you do it for me? I promise I won't tell anyone. You also said you'd do anything to get into the party. After thinking for a minute, I said, all right, okay, but no one can know. Tina jumped up and cheered. Let's get to work. We don't have much time. Tina handed me a blue thong and told me to go to the bathroom and put it on. I removed all of my clothes and stepped into the thong. It was a snug fit, but I liked how it felt. I walked out of the bathroom, and Tina clapped. Wow, nice booty. You are going to make such a good girl. Tina made me walk around her apartment in a thong and cheered me on. She had me do a runway walk and yell, you go girl, as I strutted my stuff. We went back into a room, and she slapped me on the bottom. I really liked all the attention from her and didn't mind doing all of this. She moved her chair into her bathroom and asked me to take a seat. Taking out a big bag of beauty supplies, she first used a razor to shave my entire body. She said she would have given me a Brazilian wax if we had more time. She then washed my hair and straightened it, tweezed my eyebrows and other hair on my face, and began applying makeup. As she sat in my lap to do my makeup, I couldn't tell if she was doing this to intentionally tease me. She put foundation and lots of other products on my face. Looking at myself in the mirror, I was astounded by how feminine I looked. I smiled and winked at myself. If I had seen myself on campus, I would have thought that I was hot. Tina asked me to get up and move the chair out of the bathroom. She put a matching blue bra on me and clasped it in the back. She then brought out the dress, a tight black party dress. I stepped into it, and she pulled it up over my body. She adjusted the dress and said, "Wow, you look cute. If I was a guy, I would definitely hit on you." That made me blush. Tina attached a pair of fake hoops to my ears, then brought out black party heels. "I was going to wear these, but I think you can rock them better," she said. I put them on and practiced walking around for a bit. Tina slid some breast pads under my chest and added a necklace as a finishing touch. "All done," she said. Tina quickly got ready and made me wait in her living room while she was in the bathroom. Suddenly, I heard the door to her apartment unlock, and her roommate walked in. She seemed to be in a rush and said a brief hi. I waved and smiled. She went straight to her room and closed the door. I guess I was passed off as a woman. I immediately got a boost of confidence and was ready to go to the party. Tina came out of her room, and I froze. She was wearing a red two-piece dress and looked beautiful. I told her she looked good, and she took my hand. She pulled me into the bathroom and took out her phone. She put her hand on my hip and snapped a picture of us. "So many guys are going to be simping over us tonight," she said. I chuckled awkwardly and reminded myself not to be a simp for her. Tina handed me a purse and told me to put all my stuff in it. She grabbed her purse, and we headed out of her apartment. I called an Uber, and we both got into the back. The driver was a middle-aged guy and was making lots of eye contact with me through the mirror. He said, "So where are you ladies going tonight?" Tina motioned to me to respond. I said in my best girl voice, "We're going to a party." The driver didn't seem to notice my fake voice and carried on the conversation. 10 minutes later, we got out of the Uber and arrived at the party. Tina took my hand and walked to the front of the line. She whispered something to the man at the door, and he let us both slide by. I felt his eyes on my body as I slipped by him. I felt my dress rub up against his jeans as I passed. The party was packed, and the music was blaring. We beelined to the dance floor. Tina started hugging people and introducing me. I introduced myself as Taylor, and Tina laughed when she heard that. No one seemed to be suspicious about me. I could feel the eyes of a few of the guys on me, and it felt a bit creepy. The party was packed with girls and probably had a 1 guy to 10 girl ratio. I understood why it was so hard to get in as a guy. Tina took my hand, and we started dancing. After a few minutes, we split up and started dancing separately. Suddenly, I felt someone dancing behind me. It was one of the frat guys. He started dancing up behind me. I didn't know what to do and just kept dancing from side to side in place. He put his hands around me and started rubbing up against me. Tina burst out of the crowd and grabbed me. The frat guy didn't seem to care and went off in his search for another girl. Tina said, "See, this is what I'm talking about." After another half an hour of dancing, we went upstairs and into a room with some of the frat guys. The room was loud with conversation until there was a loud whistle and everyone quieted down. "Thank you for coming out to our party, ladies. For those of you that don't know, my name is Kurt, and I'm the president of Kappa Sig," one of the frat guys said. Everyone clapped. There were around 10 dudes and 15 girls in the room. "As always, we are going to be playing some games to make the night a little more interesting. We will be starting with Truth or Dare," Kurt continued. Everyone smiled, and Kurt looked around the room. He locked eyes with Tina and said, "Truth or Dare." Tina said, "Dare." Kurt thought for a minute, then said, "Make out with one person in this room for 30 seconds. I think Kurt was hoping that Tina would make out with him. Tina looked around the room, then smiled at me. She leaned over and put her hand on my cheek. Our lips locked, and we began making out. Instinctively, my hand went on her hips and pulled her in closer. She slid her hands around me and grabbed my bottom. We slowly made out for the rest of the time until she moved away from me. We both smiled, and everyone clapped. I couldn't believe what had just happened. This was the best party ever. A few more turns happened until I got picked. Kurt smiled and said, "Truth or dare?" I said, "Dare." Kurt said, "Take off your dress." I immediately froze and looked at Tina. She had a worried look on her face. Everyone started chanting, "Do it, do it, do it." I continued to look at Kurt, and he said, "You have 5 seconds, or else we'll ask you to leave." I got up and turned towards the corner of the room. I pulled up my dress over my head and dropped it to the floor. All the guys whistled, and I began to turn around. Everyone's face changed instantly. Kurt yelled, "That's a dude," and everyone froze. I immediately bolted out of the room and ran down the stairs. I heard lots of footsteps chasing after me. I ran through the dance floor and out the front door. Kurt and his friends were only a few seconds behind me as I ran down the sidewalk. Because of my size, I was a pretty good runner and slowly gained ground on Kurt. It also helped that I was wearing only a bra and a thong. I quickly lost them and slowed my pace to a walk. I knew where I was and jogged back to Tina's apartment. I heard cars honk at me as they went by. Tina was waiting at her apartment and gave me a big hug. She said that she was so sorry and that she shouldn't have pressured me to go. I said it was okay and that I had a lot of fun. We went up to her apartment, and I ended up spending the night. Tina and I started talking more in the following weeks and started dating about 3 months later. "I'm glad I went to that party." "Hey guys," I said. Corey and Brittany had been in a loving relationship for many years, and they complemented each other perfectly. Corey had always felt different from his peers, drawn to clothing and accessories typically associated with the opposite gender. However, he didn't necessarily want to be a girl, but found a sense of freedom and expression in dressing up. As Corey grew older, he began to experiment more and more with cross-dressing, often sneaking into his mother's closet to try on dresses and makeup. At first, he kept this part of himself hidden, worried about what others would think if they found out. But as he entered his teenage years, he began to feel more and more frustrated and suffocated by societal expectations. Eventually, Corey made the difficult decision to come out to his friends and family. The reaction was mixed, with some being understanding and supportive, while others were less so. Nevertheless, Corey continued to embrace his love for cross-dressing, finding solace in the freedom and creativity it brought him. It was around this time that Corey met Brittany, who was kind, compassionate, and accepting of Corey's true identity from the moment they met. She was unlike anyone he had ever known before, and he was grateful to have her by his side as he navigated the challenges of coming out. As Corey got older, he began to wonder if he could turn his passion for cross-dressing into a career. He did some research and was surprised to discover that there was a whole community of people out there who shared his interests and were making a living off it. Inspired by this realization, Corey started a blog sharing his tips and tricks for cross-dressing and makeup, and eventually began making YouTube videos as well. As his following grew, he saw the potential for turning it into a full-time job, which is precisely what he did. With hard work and dedication, Corey built a successful business around his love for cross-dressing. He started offering private consultations and makeup lessons, and even began designing and selling his line of clothing and accessories. Brittany was by his side every step of the way, offering support and encouragement. As Corey looked back on his journey, he was filled with gratitude and pride. He had come a long way from the scared and isolated teenager he had once been. He had found the courage to be true to himself and discovered a passion and a career that brought him joy and fulfillment. But more than that, he had learned the power of love for oneself and for others. He found that when he embraced and celebrated his unique identity, he was able to connect with others in a deeper and more meaningful way. As Corey's business continued to grow and thrive, he and Brittany became known as the go-to team for all things related to cross-dressing and makeup. They traveled all over the country, offering private consultations and hosting workshops and events for those interested in exploring their love for cross-dressing. But even as their business and fame grew, Corey and Brittany never lost sight of what was truly important to them. They remained humble and grounded, always remembering where they had come from and the struggles they had faced. They used their platform to lift up and empower others, always striving to make a positive impact in the world. As they looked back on their journey, Corey and Brittany were filled with gratitude and pride. They had overcome so many challenges and found a way to turn their passion into a successful career. But more than that, they had found a sense of purpose and fulfillment in helping others. So Corey and Brittany continued to work tirelessly, using their talents and their platform to inspire and empower those around them. They knew that as long as and that's exactly what Corey and Brittany did. They continued to use their platform to inspire and empower those around them. Through their workshops and events, they created a safe and welcoming space for individuals interested in exploring their love for cross-dressing and makeup. Corey found a sense of freedom and expression that he couldn't find in his everyday life as Corey. He was able to tap into a different side of his personality and express himself in ways that he couldn't before, and Brittany was there to support him every step of the way. Together, they became known as the go-to team for all things related to cross-dressing and makeup. Their business continued to thrive, and they were able to reach more and more people who shared their interests. But even as their business grew, Corey and Brittany never lost sight of what was truly important to them. They remained humble and grounded, always remembering where they came from and the struggles they faced along the way. They also recognized the importance of self-love and acceptance. Through their work, they encouraged others to embrace their unique identities and celebrate their individuality. They knew that when people were able to be true to themselves, they could make a positive impact in the world. As they looked back on their journey, Corey and Brittany were filled with gratitude and pride. They had overcome so many challenges and found a way to turn their passion into a successful career. But more than that, they had found a sense of purpose and fulfillment in helping others. Corey had always known that he was different from his peers, but he didn't let that stop him from pursuing his dreams. And with Brittany by his side, he was able to achieve more than he ever thought possible. Together, they proved that love and acceptance could overcome any obstacle. David was a conservative married father of two who lived a quiet, conventional life. He worked as an accountant at a local firm and was content with his simple existence. However, everything changed one day when his wife, Amelia, made a surprising request. "David, I have a surprise for you," she said with a gleam in her eye. "I've hired a drag queen to perform at our daughter's birthday party." David was taken aback. He had never heard of such a thing and was unsure how to respond. But Amelia was insistent and explained that she wanted to do something different and fun for their daughter's special day. Despite his reservations, David went along with his wife's plans and soon found himself thrown into the world of drag. The drag queen named Moon was an over-the-top, larger-than-life performer who captivated everyone at the party, including David. As he watched Moon perform, he couldn't help but be drawn to her confidence and charisma. He was fascinated by the way she transformed herself from a regular person into a glamorous diva, commanding the attention of everyone in the room. After the party, David found himself thinking about Moon and the world of drag more and more. He was curious about the motivations behind the performers and what drew them to the lifestyle. Before he knew it, David found himself diving deeper into the drag community, attending shows, and even trying on women's clothing himself. As he explored this new world, David began to question his own sexuality and identity. He had always considered himself a straight married man, but now he wasn't so sure. He was torn between his conventional upbringing and the newfound freedom and expression he was experiencing as he delved into the world of drag. As the days passed, David found himself thinking more and more about the drag community. He couldn't stop thinking about the way the drag queens had performed, and he found himself drawn to the confidence and beauty that they displayed. He started to become curious about the world of drag and began to do some research on his own. Despite his newfound interest in drag, David tried to push these thoughts to the back of his mind. He was a conservative married man with children, and he was afraid of what others might think if they found out about his newfound interest. He tried to ignore his feelings, but they only grew stronger. One day, David decided to attend a local drag show in secret. He was nervous about being seen, but was also excited to experience the energy of the drag community for himself. When he arrived, he was immediately struck by the atmosphere. The room was filled with people of all ages and backgrounds, all there to celebrate the art of drag. David was amazed by the performances and captivated by the confidence and beauty of the drag queens on stage. As the night went on, David found himself talking to some of the performers. He was surprised to find that they were kind and welcoming, happy to answer his questions and share their experiences with him. He felt a sense of belonging that he had never felt before and began to see drag in a new light. David left the drag show feeling empowered and inspired. He realized that he didn't have to be confined by societal expectations and that he could be whoever he wanted to be. He was filled with newfound confidence and excited about the possibilities that lay ahead. As David became more involved in the drag community, he started to see things from a new perspective. He had always lived his life as a conservative straight man, but now he was beginning to question that identity. He found himself drawn to the glamour, excitement, and freedom of the drag scene, feeling more confident and alive than he had in years. At first, David tried to keep his involvement in the drag world a secret from his wife and friends. But as he grew more confident in his new identity, he began to let more and more people in on the secret. He was surprised by the support he received from his friends, many of whom were also drawn to the drag scene. However, David's wife was not supportive. She was shocked and hurt when she learned that her husband had been dressing up in women's clothing and felt like she didn't know him anymore. She was also worried about what people would say if they found out and feared that their reputation and marriage would be ruined. Despite his wife's reservations, David was determined to continue his exploration of the drag world. He loved the freedom and acceptance he felt in that community and was not willing to give that up. As David continued to perform, he began to realize that he was truly living for the first time and that he was finally able to be true to himself. Although his journey was not easy, it was one of self-discovery and liberation. He learned that it was never too late to pursue your dreams and that you should never be afraid to be yourself. As he took the stage in his final performance, he knew that he was finally living the life that he was meant to live and that he was truly happy. As David continued to explore the world of drag and perform as Tina, he began to feel more confident and comfortable in his own skin. He loved the freedom that came with performing and the sense of belonging he found in the drag community. He also found that he had a talent for singing and dancing, which was a newfound passion for him. However, as much as he enjoyed his new hobby, he also struggled with the guilt and confusion it brought about. He still loved his wife and family, but he couldn't ignore the feelings he was having for other men. He didn't know how to reconcile his old conservative values with his new identity as a drag performer. One day, David's wife discovered some of his Tina outfits and was shocked by what she saw. She confronted him about it, and he finally opened up to her about his experiences and feelings. It was a difficult and emotional conversation, but in the end, they agreed to work through their differences and support each other from that moment on. David found a way to balance his conservative family life with his newfound passion for drag. He continued to perform as Tina, but only in safe spaces where he felt free to be himself. He found that he was happier and more fulfilled as a result. He realized that he didn't have to choose between his old values and his new identity, but could find a way to reconcile the two and be true to himself. Deanna had just returned from the grocery store with ingredients for the supper that was being cooked for them. Jacob had been dating her for 4 months and was head over heels for her. Did you used to have a living girlfriend, Jacob? Diana asked him. What? No, why do you ask that? Jacob replied. Oh, I saw at least a dozen dresses and nighties hanging in your closet, she said while watching him closely. Ah, what were you doing in my closet? Jacob put down the grocery bags and faced her. I was checking your clothes sizes. I was planning on buying you a few things for your birthday next week. I wasn't sure what size you were. So why the women's clothing? Diana asked curiously. Oh, my sister left them here. She asked me to keep them until we see each other at Christmas, Jacob explained. Come on, Jacob, I can tell when you're lying. I don't want to start doubting you. That would be a game changer, Diana said, putting her hands on her hips and staring him down. Jacob took a seat at the kitchen table and ran his hands through his hair. You might not want to hear the truth, he said. Diana took a seat at the table next to him and took his hand. Jacob, do you wear women's clothing? Jacob grimaced and began chewing a fingernail. It was hard to answer. Yes, he finally choked out. He was red-faced and sweating. Okay, she said. Should we get started on dinner? What do you mean it's all right? Jacob asked. I'm not sure. Give me some time to think about it. For now, I'm looking forward to dinner. You're not getting out of that, Diana replied. They worked amicably to get things on the table, and it almost felt as if the conversation had never taken place. This is really good, Diana said as she scooped another clam out of its shell. You're a good cook. Thanks, Jacob said and refilled her wine glass. Makeup, she said, pausing to look at him. I guess the topic was still open. Jacob swallowed hard. Yes, there was no point in lying to her. Do you wear panties and a bra? Diana asked. Jacob put his head in his hands. A small smile played across her face. Do you have a girl's name when you dress up like that? She continued. How did she know exactly the right questions to ask? Jacob thought. I do. My feminine dress-up name is Catherine. It means happy. Well, wow, she said and went back to eating. A moment later, she floated another question. Do you go out in public dressed up like that? Jacob played with his napkin. I haven't. Why not? I sighed, too scared to. I guess I've thought about doing that. Do you want to have sex with men? Diana asked. No, absolutely not. I don't think like that. I do this because it excites me, Jacob explained. He tried to make her see that he was telling the truth. He wasn't interested in that kind of sex. I guess that's reassuring. Sort of, for me anyway. Thanks for the dinner. It was as good as you promised, Diana said, looking at her watch. Geez, it's late. I better head home. You don't want to stay? Jacob asked. They had started having sex on date nights, and it was pretty wonderful stuff. He had been looking forward to it all week. No, I don't think that's a good idea right now, Diana replied. She got up from the table and picked up her purse. I'll call you, Jacob said. If you want, goodbye. Oh, Jacob, she gave him a peck on the cheek. He sat by himself playing with the pasta and clams on his plate. That could have gone worse, but that goodbye felt so final. Damn, I should have told her up front, but it seemed wrong too. It was pretty much a relationship killer if you put it out there on the first or second date. Probably there was no good answer. She didn't return my calls or texts on my birthday. I brought home a pizza and opened a beer. I turned on the TV and flipped through the streaming channels, looking for a movie to lose myself in. I'll admit, I was feeling pretty down. It took me a moment to realize somebody was pounding on the door loudly. I peeked through the peephole. It was Diana. I opened the door with an exclamation of surprise. Didn't expect you, but I'm glad you dropped by. She was holding bags full of wrapped presents. Aren't you going to invite me in? It was hard not to notice that she wasn't wearing a bra, and all of her lovely curves were barely concealed by the tight halter she was wearing. I stepped aside and gestured her in. She headed for the family room and dumped the bags. Happy birthday, she said with a glittering smile. Aren't you going to offer me one of those beers you're drinking? I hurried to pour one for her. So, I said, handing her the drink. You didn't answer my calls. I was worried, she shrugged. Had a lot of thinking and reading to do. Even talked to a friend who discovered she was married to a cross-dresser. It was all very confusing. I took a deep breath and decided to take a chance. Diana, yes, please. I took her into my arms and kissed her. She kissed back with as much passion as I remembered. She pushed one of the bags at me. You said getting dressed excites you. I brought you some things, Catherine. I want to see. I tore open the packages. There were slinky, sexy panties, bras that made my fingers tingle just holding them, a garter belt, and 3 pairs of stockings that I ached to try on. I was particularly attracted to a pair of satin pajamas. I could imagine curling up in bed wearing them. It was the stuff that dreams are made of. Diana watched me as I worked my way through the abundance of beautiful things she brought. This is all pretty classy stuff, I said. Expensive, sexy as hell. My things are pretty tame in comparison, I know. I figured, go big or go home. Do you like them? My God, Diana, I love them. You've made me one happy girl. Now to see if you've been telling the truth. I want you to go put on the red dress, pick your favorite panties and bra. I got you a B cup so you can put in the breast forms I bought you. Try the garters and stockings too. You have a wig and high heels and bedding. I nodded good. I want to see you dressed to the nines, impress me. Bathe and shave your legs and go over your face again. I want you smooth as a baby's bottom. I like soft skin, Diana said as she pulled out one last package from her purse. It's perfume, the good stuff. You're going to smell as good as you look. I grabbed my new things and headed into the bathroom to shave like she had asked. It took me 60 minutes before I could show her the results. I was embarrassed and knew I was blushing like a schoolboy seeing his first pair of breasts. Holy cow, Catherine, you're a real doll. This is amazing. I want to show you one more thing, Diana said. She took me by the hand and led me into the kitchen. There, sitting at the table, was a very attractive woman I didn't recognize. Who are you? I stammered. I wanted to bolt from my bedroom and hide under the bed. I was trembling. I was so surprised. What was Diana up to? I'm Emma. I'm a cosmetologist, and I'm going to do your makeup, Emma said. Diana guided me to the empty chair. Without her help, I don't think I would have made it. I sat silently while a professional did my makeup. I mostly made a hash of it when I did it here alone. I rarely did more than my lips and a little eyeliner. This was a complete makeover. While Emma worked on my face, Diana painted my nails. I was bursting with excitement. I was so damn happy. When Emma was finished, she let me look in the mirror. A face I didn't recognize looked back at me. I couldn't speak. I wanted to cry, but I knew that would spoil the gorgeous work that had been done. I kept saying thank you over and over like a broken record. Emma, have you told her yet? Diana asked. She took my hand. Catherine, sweetheart, we're going out on a date. It's your birthday, and I want to make it a night you'll always remember. I felt panic take root. No, I'm terrified of that, I said. That didn't stop me. I can't go out alone like this. I was hyperventilating, sucking in short gulps of air. Emma patted my arm. No reason to panic, Catherine. It's a double date. I'll be there, and so will Jessica. Diana chuckled. I told you I had a friend who married a cross-dresser. Jessica is her husband. He's dying to meet you. You're going to have the time of your life. And when we come back to your place afterwards, I'm going to make it even more special. She held out her hand, and I stood up. I was afraid but felt safe with her. All right, girlfriends, I said. Let's party. My friend Michael effortlessly climbed up the side of his tree. The rope with multiple knots tied on it made his climb easier, and he went all the way up to the top. I had known Michael since about 3rd grade, but I didn't meet him at school. My friend Fred, who I had known since the 2nd grade, introduced us. All 3 of us were at Michael's house, just hanging out. Michael came skittering back down the tree using the rope for leverage, and when he got to the bottom, he handed me the rope, indicating it was my turn. I got about 2 knots up and came tumbling down. I'm done, I thought as I was lying in the dirt. Growing up, I was told that I could not play rough sports because I only had one kidney. I took the warnings to heart, mostly because I didn't want to die. That, and when people keep telling you that if you get hit in just the right way, you can die, you become extra cautious. So, I learned to play video games very well, and none of my friends could beat me in fighting. Michael laughed and asked if I was okay, and then he helped me up. I know you can do better than that, he said. I dang near tripped over my clothes while getting up because they were so baggy. It was the style at the time, which I didn't mind because I didn't much care for my body. About that time, Michael's brothers came out and decided to take over the tree activities for the day. It was okay, but for some reason, I held some sort of resentment towards them. I have a competitive nature, and that tree was mocking me. Fred was over on the sidewalk riding his skateboard doing tricks, so we decided to go and join him. I could do an ollie, but even then, I could only do it half the time. I preferred bikes for sure. As it was getting late, Michael headed back inside, and Fred and I headed back to my house. Fred was overweight and had been since I first met him. He was nice to me in second grade, so naturally we became friends. Oddly enough, the year I met him was the year he was held back. 2 years later, in the 4th grade, I was held back by the exact same teacher. She was hard to get along with, for some reason. Now that I think of it, I held a little resentment for her because she took my friend away from me for 2 years. No wonder I didn't do anything she said. Fred would come to my house ever since we were young, and his mom would pick him up after she got home from work. When we got to my house, which was only around the corner from Michael's house, Fred's mom was already there. We said our goodbyes, and I headed inside. One of my best friends, because we knew each other since we were 1 or 2 years old, was Deborah. I was envious of her in multiple ways. 1, I was attracted to her. 2, I wanted to be her. Was my life confusing? Yup. I waved hi to her, and she waved back. Hey, I said. She was busy on the phone or watching YouTube. I didn't know which exactly, but as I was headed to the kitchen, Deborah is, in my imagination, what I would have looked like if I had been born a girl. We had the same hair color, similar eyes, and were about the same height. I warmed up some of Mom's refried beans in a pan so I could make a burrito. Instant food, this was not. I was taken aback by Donald's question. Did he know about my feelings for Deborah? Was it that obvious? I tried to play it cool and shrugged, saying something non-committal like, I don't know, maybe. Donald and the other guys in my group didn't seem to think much of it and went back to discussing the project we were working on. But I couldn't concentrate anymore. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, wondering if Donald was just making small talk or if he actually knew something. The rest of the day passed in a blur. When the final bell rang, I hurried out of the classroom and headed straight home. I didn't even bother stopping by Fred's house, which was on the way. I needed to be alone and think. As soon as I got home, I went to my room and closed the door. I sat on my bed, staring at the wall, trying to make sense of my jumbled thoughts. Why did Donald ask me if I liked a girl? Did he know about my crush on Deborah? Did anyone else know? And why was I so hung up on her in the first place? Was it because I was attracted to her, or because I wanted to be like her? Or maybe it was both. I felt a knot forming in my stomach. I had never talked to anyone about these feelings before, not even my closest friends. The idea of opening up to someone was terrifying. What if they didn't understand? What if they thought I was weird or gross or something? I didn't want to be seen as different or abnormal. I just wanted to fit in. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that trying to suppress my feelings was only making things worse. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when it wasn't. I needed to talk to someone, even if it was scary. Just then, there was a knock on my door. It was my mom. Hey, kiddo, she said, poking her head in. How was school? I shrugged. It was okay. You seem a little down. Is everything all right? I hesitated for a moment, then blurted out, Mom, can I talk to you about something? Of course, she said, coming into the room and sitting down next to me. What's on your mind? I took a deep breath. It's about feelings. Like I have these feelings for someone, but I don't know if they're normal or not. My mom looked at me with concern. What kind of feelings? I paused, trying to find the right words. Well, it's this girl at school. I really like her, but I don't know if it's just because she's pretty or if there's more to it. And sometimes I wonder if maybe I want to be like her, you know? Like, if I'm supposed to be a girl instead of a boy. My mum's expression softened. Oh, sweetie, it's normal to have crushes on people, regardless of their gender. And it's also normal to question your identity and who you are. That's all part of growing up. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. It was like a weight had been lifted off my chest. My mom didn't think I was weird or gross or anything like that. She just wanted to help me figure things out. Thanks, Mom, I said, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. Anytime, kiddo, she said, giving me a hug. Just remember that I love you no matter what, okay? Okay, I said, feeling a sense of. Since I was young, I've always been fascinated with women's clothing. Dressing up makes me feel alive and comfortable in my own skin. However, since getting married, I've not had many chances to do so. My wife, Vivian, has no idea about my cross-dressing. I keep all of my outfits hidden from her in a storage locker. Vivian is part of the C-suite of a big pharmaceutical company and often goes on business trips. In her absence, I retrieve my clothes from the storage locker and wear them around the house. I have tried wearing my wife's clothes in the past, but she has commented on how they are out of place when she returns. I always blame it on the housekeepers and decide to wear my own clothes instead. This weekend, Vivian is traveling to Cancun for a company retreat, and I have the place to myself. When I got back from work on Friday, I checked Vivian's location to ensure she was gone for the weekend. It showed that she was at the airport 40 minutes ago, so I assumed she was already in the air. I sighed a breath of relief and went to retrieve my clothes from the storage box. It was a quick drive from our house, and I was back in 15 minutes. Up in my room, I took off all of my clothes and slipped on a bright pink lace thong. I loved how thongs felt, and I admired myself in the mirror. Then, I put on some red heels, and something about the thong and heel combination made me feel powerful. The way the thong hugged my body made me feel feminine. I then put on a matching bra and filled it with 2 pads. I began to feel like a woman. I applied some red lipstick and added some mascara. My face was naturally very feminine, so I didn't have to do much work. Next, I took out my wig and attached it to my hair. It was one of the most expensive items in my stash, custom made, and looked real when I put it on properly. Today, I felt formal and decided to wear my black dress. It was pretty long and had a lot of frills on the lower part. I pulled it up on me and adjusted the back. To top things off, I put a necklace around my neck, then made my way downstairs. I had a tripod that I mounted my phone on to take pictures of myself. I set it in different places around the house and snapped dozens of shots. I positioned the tripod right behind the front door and wanted to do a sexy shot of me sitting on the stairs. I pulled up the dress slightly to reveal my legs, then waited for the timer to finish and the camera to take a picture. Unfortunately, that picture was never taken. Just as the timer was counting down, the front door violently swung open, and Vivian walked in, holding a bouquet of flowers. She had a big smile on her face and didn't notice me initially, as she was looking to see what she knocked over. Suddenly, she looked up and her eyes met. As soon as Vivian walked in, she dropped her flowers and asked me what was going on. I was speechless and just stared at her, feeling exposed. She didn't say anything either, and I could feel her taking it all in. I told her I would change immediately and started to make my way upstairs. However, she stopped me and told me to stay dressed like that and wait for her in the living room. I sat down on the couch and waited as Vivian put away her things. I heard her go upstairs into our bedroom, and I was sure she saw all my stuff laid out all over the bed and floor. Vivian didn't come back down for a while, but I patiently waited on the couch, tapping my heels against the floor. When Vivian came downstairs, she had changed into sweatpants and a shirt and began asking me questions. She asked how long I had been wearing women's clothes, and I responded a few years. She also asked where I learned to apply makeup so well, and I told her I watched a lot of YouTube videos. Vivian then asked why I hadn't told her about it. I sighed and said that I was worried she wouldn't accept me and would force me to stop. I began to tear up a little, and I felt Vivian's mood change. She came over to me and gave me a hug, saying she wished I had told her earlier. Vivian then surprised me by saying she was surprised by how convincing of a woman I was, and that I was actually kind of cute like this. Vivian inspected my wig and braid, and then leaned in to kiss me, some of the lipstick sticking to her lip. She laughed as she wiped it off and asked why I was dressed so formally. She suggested I change into something more comfortable. We both went upstairs, and Vivian watched as I changed into my nighties, a Victoria's Secret two-piece cami set. I was struggling a bit to remove my dress since it was very tight on the top. Vivian came up behind me and helped me unzip it. The dress fell to the ground, and I felt her eyes on me. Vivian said I looked cute in the thong, and that she didn't realize my bottom was so big. She helped me change into the cami set, and then we cuddled for a while and talked more about cross-dressing. I told her I collected a few outfits over time and would wear them inside of the house on weekends when she was gone. Vivian asked me why I never wore them out, and I told her I was too scared. She asked me if I wanted to go out the next day dressed up, and I said yes. We talked some more, and Vivian explained that her plane had some technical issues and had to turn around. The next few flights were full, so she decided to come home and spend the weekend with me instead. We both chuckled at the irony of the situation. We continued to cuddle until we both fell asleep. The next morning, Vivian woke me up and told me she had a big day planned for me. She had already gone through all of my outfits and picked out something for me to wear. After showering, I changed into the clothes that Vivian had left out for me. She had picked out a jean skirt, yellow top, pink panties, and a pink bra. I quickly put on the outfit and readjusted my wig. We ate breakfast together at the dining table before getting ready to leave. Vivian was wearing sweatpants and a shirt with her hair tied up. She asked me to wear the same red heels that I wore yesterday so that she could see how I walked in them. We touched up our makeup and headed out. First, we went to the hair salon to get our nails done. The ladies doing our nails spoke in a foreign language, but I could tell they were talking about us. We then went shopping at the mall, holding hands and attracting attention. We ended up at Victoria's Secret, looking at undergarments for both of us. The lady helping us seemed interested in me and asked for my name. As soon as I spoke, her expression changed, and she seemed uncomfortable. Vivian did all the talking from then on, and we picked out matching undergarments. We then went to the food court and got some chipotle. As we ate, I noticed a group of guys staring at us. Just as we were finishing, two of the guys approached us and asked for our numbers. I spoke up and said they were handsome too in my most manly voice. The guys ran off and we laughed together. Our final stop was a shoe store where I tried on many shoes, but none of them fit well. We decided not to buy anything and headed back to our car. On the way, we stopped at a gas station to refill the tank. Vivian suggested that I refill the gas in my underwear, and I agreed. I changed into just my panties and bra and started pumping gas. A guy in boots and a cowboy hat stepped out of his truck and spotted me. He chuckled to himself and said, "What an interesting outfit for the gas station." I responded that my clothes had gotten dirty, and this was the only change of clothes I had in the car. He laughed and said, "What a crazy position to be in." Over the next few years, Vivian and I had many outings where I dressed up. Our marriage got better, and I felt closer than ever to my wife. Looking back, I'm glad she caught me cross-dressing. Jack, the solid starter of the high school baseball team, was in a slump. Despite being good for 15 wins every season, he hadn't won a single game this year and couldn't pitch for more than 4 innings before the manager pulled him out of the game. Jack's girlfriend, Anna, had read about a therapist, Dr. Norton, who used hypnosis to aid slumping sports stars. She urged Jack to make an appointment, and although he initially pushed it aside, he eventually mentioned the idea to his manager, who agreed to give it a try. Jack arrived at Dr. Norton's waiting room and was surprised by the nature of her other patients. He didn't see a single male athlete in the place. The whole situation added to his nervousness. Dr. Norton's receptionist, a pert in a tight mini-skirt, motioned him to the door. Jack entered the therapist's sanctum sanctorum, which was a richly appointed room with dark walls, black furniture, and drawn curtains. The one spot of light was a small lamp on the doctor's desk, and there was a high-back swivel chair behind the desk turned to the windows, so Jack couldn't see its occupant. Suddenly the chair turned, and Jack was stunned by his first sight of the therapist. Dr. Norton was a glamorous auburn-haired beauty, her hair falling to her shoulders in gentle waves. She wore a conservative power suit that was carefully tailored to her lush body. Jack had no idea that his therapist would be female. "Please have a seat," she said, indicating a black leather recliner. Jack sat, and the chair immediately adjusted to a half-reclining position, his head on a level with the lamp on the desk. "That's very good, Jack," Dr. Norton continued. "Just relax and look at the light. The light is very relaxing, isn't it? All you can see is the light. All you can hear is my voice." Jack realized she was hypnotizing him, but it didn't really concern him. After all, that's what he had come here for. In a very short time, he was completely unaware of anything happening around him. Clea Norton smiled to herself. Yes, Jack would be yet another great subject. She must remember to thank Anna for recommending him. She stood and stripped out of her suit, revealing her severely restricted waist in its PVC corset. "Open your eyes, Jack," she said quietly. "You are still deeply hypnotized, but you can see what I tell you to see." "What do you see, Jack?" "I see you, Dr. Norton," he replied numbly. "Do you like what you see?" "Yes, Doctor. You're very beautiful," Jack answered. "Would you like to be this beautiful?" the hypnotist asked the entranced youth. "How could I be?" Jack was confused, even in his mesmerized state. "I'm not a girl." "Leave that to me," Dr. Norton replied, smiling. Later that afternoon, Anna entered Dr. Norton's office. The receptionist grinned and waved her into the inner room. Anna stood for a moment, momentarily unsure that she had arrived at the appointed time. Dr. Norton sat behind her desk, grinning like a Cheshire cat, while a tall, attractive blonde girl, clad in a very short mini-dress, posed on the couch. The girl seemed completely unaware of Anna's presence, even though the door was in her line of sight. Then the reality dawned on Anna. "Oh my God," she gasped. "Jack, please," Dr. Norton corrected her. "It's Jack Hunther now." She stood and walked over to the transformed athlete. "Right." Jack Hunther obeyed Anna's command without hesitation, moving gracefully to the rhythm of a slow, sensual tune playing in the background. Her movements were fluid and seductive, her body swaying with every beat. Anna watched with admiration, feeling a sense of power and control over her lover. As the song came to an end, Jack Hunther turned to face Anna, a look of longing in her eyes. "I love you so much, Anna," she said, her voice soft and sweet. "I would do anything for you." Anna smiled, feeling a rush of excitement and arousal. She walked over to Jack Hunther and took her in her arms, holding her close. "I know you would, my love," she said, her lips brushing against Jack Hunther's ear. "And I promise to take good care of you." With that, Anna led Jack Hunther to the bed, where they spent the rest of the night exploring each other's bodies, lost in a world of passion and desire. In the weeks that followed, Anna found herself growing more and more addicted to the power she held over Jack Hunther. She would often use the trigger phrase to switch her lover's personality, enjoying the feeling of control it gave her. But as time went on, Anna began to feel a sense of guilt and shame over what she was doing. She knew that what she was doing was wrong, that she was manipulating and exploiting Jack's vulnerability. Finally, one day, she made the decision to end the charade. She sat down with Jack and explained everything to him, apologizing profusely for what she had done. To her surprise, Jack was surprisingly understanding. "I knew something was different," he said, his voice calm and measured. "I just didn't know what it was." Anna felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had expected Jack to be angry and resentful, but instead, he was willing to forgive her and move on. Together, they worked with a new therapist, one who specialized in helping athletes overcome slumps without the use of hypnosis. Over time, Jack regained his confidence and his form, once again becoming the star pitcher he had always been. And while their relationship had been forever changed by what had happened, Anna and Jack remained committed to each other, determined to build a future together that was based on honesty, trust, and mutual respect. Anna watched with a smile on her face as Jacintha began to dance for her. She had always been attracted to Jack, but seeing him as a girl was a whole new level of desire for her. She loved the way he moved, so graceful and fluid, and the way he looked in the feminine gown and lingerie made her heart race. As Jacintha twirled around the room, Anna couldn't resist the temptation any longer. She walked up to the dancer and pulled her into a passionate kiss. Jacintha responded eagerly, wrapping her arms around Anna's neck and deepening the kiss. It was like nothing either of them had experienced before. Anna felt electricity in the air, a raw and powerful attraction that she had never felt with anyone else. And for Jacintha, it was like a dream come true, finally able to express the feelings she had been suppressing for so long. After a few minutes, they broke the kiss, both breathing heavily. "I love you so much, Jacintha," Anna said, looking into her lover's eyes. "And I love you, Anna," Jacintha replied with a smile. For the rest of the night, they explored each other's bodies, making love with a passion and intensity that neither of them had ever experienced before. And as the sun began to rise, they lay in bed together, exhausted but completely satisfied. As they cuddled together, Anna whispered the trigger phrase that Dr. Norton had given her, and Jacintha slowly faded away, replaced once again by Jack. But even as a boy, he knew that he would never forget the amazing experience he had just had, and that he would always love Anna for helping him discover a side of himself that he had never known existed. Billy had always felt like there was something different about him. He didn't know what it was, but he felt like he didn't quite fit in with the other boys. As he grew older, he began to realize that he was attracted to men, which only added to his confusion. But it wasn't until he discovered crossdressing that everything started to make sense. At first, Billy was hesitant to try on women's clothes. He was afraid of what people might think if they found out. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that he didn't care. He wanted to feel beautiful and feminine, even if it was just in secret. So Billy started to explore his feminine side. He would sneak into his mom's closet when no one was home and try on her dresses and heels. He loved the way the clothes made him feel, like he was finally able to be himself. But he knew he couldn't keep it a secret forever. Eventually, Billy decided to come out to his closest friend, Sarah. He was terrified of her reaction, but to his surprise, she was completely accepting. In fact, she even helped him pick out his first outfit and taught him how to do his makeup. As time went on, Billy became more confident in his cross-dressing. He started going out in public, dressed as a woman, and even made some new friends who accepted him for who he was. But there was still one thing he wanted more than anything, to become a woman. Billy knew that transitioning was a huge decision, and one that would change his life forever. But he also knew that it was what he truly wanted. So he started taking hormones and saving up for surgery, all while continuing to live as a woman in secret. Finally, the day came when Billy was ready to reveal his true self to the world. He stood nervously in front of his friends and family, dressed in a beautiful gown and with his hair and makeup done to perfection. And when he finally spoke the words, "I am a woman," he knew that he had finally found the courage to be who he had always been meant to be. As Billy transitioned into a woman, she faced many challenges. She lost some friends and family members who couldn't accept her for who she truly was. But she also gained a community of supportive people who were there for her every step of the way. One of those people was a man named David. Billy met David at a support group for transgender individuals, and they quickly hit it off. David was kind, understanding, and supportive of Billy's transition. They started dating, and before long, they were in love. David was an artist, and he encouraged Billy to explore her own creative side. Together, they started designing and making their own clothes. Billy loved the process of creating beautiful and unique garments that expressed her true self. Their fashion designs quickly gained attention in the local community, and before long, they had a small business selling their creations. They were even featured in a local fashion show, where Billy walked the runway in a stunning gown that she had designed herself. Billy and David were happy together, and they were grateful for the supportive community that had helped them along the way. They continued to create beautiful clothes and inspire others to be true to themselves, no matter what anyone else thought. As Billy looked back on her journey, she realized that she had come a long way from the scared and confused boy who had first tried on his mom's dress. She was now a confident, beautiful woman who was living her best life, and she knew that she had David and her community to thank for that. Billy's journey towards becoming a woman was not an easy one, but she overcame every obstacle and found happiness in being true to herself. Her love for fashion and design became not only a way of expressing herself, but also a way of helping others. Together with David, Billy started a fashion line that was not only focused on creating beautiful clothes, but also on promoting diversity and inclusivity. They made sure that their designs catered to all shapes and sizes, and they used models of different ethnicities and gender identities to showcase their clothes. Their fashion line became a huge success, not just in their local community, but also in other parts of the world. They were invited to fashion shows in Paris, Milan, and New York, and their clothes were featured in magazines and fashion blogs. But for Billy, the most rewarding part of her journey was being a role model to others. She received countless messages from people who were inspired by her story and who found the courage to come out and be true to themselves. As her fashion line grew, Billy became more and more focused on promoting diversity and inclusivity. She wanted to create a world where everyone felt comfortable expressing themselves, no matter their gender identity or body type. Together with David, Billy started a foundation that provided resources and support for transgender individuals who were struggling to find their place in the world. They organized events, workshops, and mentorship programs to help people feel empowered and confident in their own skin. As the foundation grew, so did Billy's impact on the world. She became a spokesperson for the transgender community, using her platform to raise awareness and advocate for equal rights. She was invited to speak at conferences and events all over the world, sharing her story and inspiring others to be true to themselves. No longer living in secret, Billy became a beacon of hope for many. She proved that no matter how difficult the journey, it was possible to find happiness and fulfillment in being true to oneself. And her legacy lived on through the countless individuals she had inspired to be themselves and pursue their dreams. Billy's story will always be a reminder that the most important thing in life is to be true to oneself and to never give up on one's dreams, no matter how impossible they may seem. When I got laid off from my previous job, finding work was difficult. The startup I worked for had gone under, and all staff members were let go. Although I had some savings, I needed to find a new job quickly. I checked some online job postings, but couldn't find anything comparable to my previous position. A few days later, while walking in the city, I saw a flyer advertising a cleaning job with a pay rate of $85 an hour. I called the number on the flyer, and a woman answered. She told me about a cleaning position available at her boss's house and asked me to come for an interview that day. Although it was already 3:30 p.m. and the interview was scheduled for 4 p.m., I agreed as I was desperate for work. The address I was given was a big office building. I reached there a few minutes early, and the receptionist asked me to wait. After some time, someone escorted me up to the conference room. It had a massive glass window on one side, offering a view of the whole city. A young woman named Bridget walked in and introduced herself. She told me that she was looking for a full-time maid to do chores around her house, which was about 10 minutes outside the city. She needed someone available 24/7. Although I was surprised by the seriousness of the job, I agreed as the pay was excellent. Bridget asked me some questions about my background and was impressed by my previous position. She then asked if I would be okay wearing a uniform during the job. I nodded and we shook hands. Bridget asked me to start the same night and meet her at her house at 8 p.m. I agreed and we parted ways. When I arrived at her house, I was amazed by its size and modern design. Viola, Bridget's boss, opened the door and welcomed me. She gave me a quick house tour and handed me a list of tasks to do. As I was reading the list, Viola asked me to wear a maid costume while working. Although I was taken aback, I agreed as I was determined to make a good impression. Viola asked me to wear a maid costume while working. When I asked why, she explained that the outfit matched the aesthetic of the house, and she preferred the more traditional look as opposed to what maids wear now. She hoped this was not a problem for me. After thinking for a minute, I decided it might be fun to dress up, and there was certainly no harm since no one would see me. I agreed and took the outfit. She pointed me to a bathroom to change, and I entered and locked the door behind me. I slipped out of my clothes and looked at the maid uniform for a while before putting it on. The material felt high quality and it smelled good. The skirt was very short, but I guess it was okay since I was wearing boxers. I stepped into the maid uniform and pulled it up. The top was tight on me and held itself up even without straps. I admired myself in the mirror, thinking I looked like a man in a maid uniform. Nothing wrong with that. I put my clothes away and stepped out of the bathroom. Bridget was outside and looked up from her phone. She clapped her hands and said, "Wow, you look good. I knew it would fit well on you." She continued to give me praise and admired my outfit. I began my work around the house, starting with the kitchen and cleaning from there. The sink was filled with dirty dishes, and it took me a few hours to clean the entire kitchen. I continued to work late into the night, and before I knew it, the sun was rising. Bridget came down and said I did a great job. She had a guest room for me to stay in and let me up to it. She left for the office and told me that she had some more tasks for me to do later in the day. "I am super impressed by the work you did," she said. I smiled and felt appreciated. After Bridget left, I took off the maid uniform and laid down. I was very tired and quickly fell asleep. I was awoken by knocking on my door. I put on my maid uniform and opened the door. Bridget was standing in the hallway with a small gift in her hands. She handed it to me and instructed me to come down in a few minutes. I went back into my room and opened the little box. Inside were a pair of fishnet stockings. The material felt nice against my skin, and I put them on. I liked how they stretched around my legs and walked downstairs. I began working on the tasks given to me. Bridget appeared after an hour and complimented my stockings. She felt my legs with her hands and said they were a perfect fit. She said, "Keep up the good work, and I have more gifts for you." I nodded and continued to clean. Time went by quickly, and it was soon morning again. I took off my uniform and went to bed. I was awoken by a ringing phone. I quickly got up and answered it. It was Bridget. "Hi, I hope you had a good night's sleep. I left a little gift for you outside your door. Use it when you shower. I texted you some more tasks to do. See you in a few hours." She hung up the phone, and I went to retrieve the gift. I opened the door and looked down. There was a bottle of body wash with a note attached. The note read, "Enjoy some silky smooth skin." The body wash smelled nice. I got into the shower and began using it. I rubbed it all over my body. Suddenly, I felt a tingling sensation and my skin started to burn. I rubbed my skin with my hands and a bunch of hair fell off. I noticed all of my hair began washing away. The burning slowly subsided and all of my hair was gone. My skin felt super slippery. I turned off the shower and dried myself off. I put on a pair of boxers and my maid outfit. My stockings were a lot easier to put on and smoothly slid up to my thighs. The silk material felt smooth against my skin and brushed back and forth as I walked. Brian always felt like he didn't quite fit in with the other boys at school. He found himself drawn to girls' clothing and accessories, but kept these feelings locked away, scared of what others might think. One day, his mother found a pink dress hidden in the back of his closet. To Brian's surprise, she didn't judge him or tell him it was wrong. Instead, she hugged him tightly and told him to always be true to himself. Although he was overjoyed at his mother's acceptance, Brian still felt scared to fully embrace his feminine side. He continued to keep it hidden, only daring to wear the dress when he was alone in his room. But as time passed, he grew more restless, wanting nothing more than to be able to express himself fully. It was his mother who eventually pushed him to take the leap. She took him out shopping, picking out a full outfit complete with a dress, shoes, and a purse. Brian was hesitant at first, but with his mother's encouragement, he tried it on. As he looked at himself in the mirror, he finally felt like he was looking at the real him. The first few days of showing his true self to the world were nerve-wracking, but as he received nothing but love and support from his family and friends, Brian knew that he had made the right decision. He was finally living his life on his own terms, and for the first time, he felt truly happy. As he navigated this new world, he knew that there would be challenges ahead. He wasn't sure how the world would treat him, but with his mother's love and support, he felt like he could face anything. The journey had only just begun, and Brian couldn't believe what had just happened. His mother had found out about his secret desire to dress as a girl, and instead of getting angry or disappointed, she had embraced him and told him to live his life how he wanted to. He was so grateful for her understanding and support, but at the same time, he was terrified of actually following through with it. One day while he was at school, he saw a group of girls walking down the hallway dressed in their school uniforms. They looked so confident and carefree, and Brian couldn't help but feel envious. He wished he could be like them, but he knew it was impossible. That evening, as he sat alone in his room, his mother came in to check on him. She saw the sadness in his eyes and asked him what was wrong. Brian couldn't hold it in any longer and began to cry, telling her about his fears and insecurities. His mother hugged him tightly, whispering words of encouragement and support. She told him that he was strong and brave, and that he deserved to be happy. She promised to help him through this no matter what. With her support, Brian slowly began to gather the courage to express himself the way he wanted. He started small, wearing a little bit of makeup and experimenting with different clothes. His mother was there every step of the way, helping him pick out outfits and giving him advice. As the days passed, Brian started to feel more and more confident in himself. He began to pay less attention to what other people thought and more to what made him happy. He started to realize that he didn't have to hide who he was and that it was okay to be himself. He was still scared, but he knew that with his mother's help, he could do this. He couldn't wait to see where this journey would take him. As the story progresses, it becomes clear that Brian's journey to self-acceptance will not be easy. He faces judgment and discrimination from his peers and society, and must navigate the complexities of coming out as transgender. But with the love and support of his mother and those closest to him, he finds the strength to be true to himself. Brian felt a mix of emotions as he got ready for school the next day. On one hand, he was excited to finally be able to express himself as he truly felt, but on the other hand, he was scared of what his classmates and teachers would think. He had always been an introverted and reserved person, and the thought of standing out made him anxious. As he walked to school that morning, he couldn't help but feel self-conscious. He kept his head down and avoided making eye contact with anyone. When he got to school, he made a beeline for his locker, hoping to avoid any interactions. But as soon as he opened his locker, a group of his classmates came over to talk to him. "Hey, Brian, you look different today. Did you do something with your hair?" one of them asked. Brian couldn't help but feel his heart race as he replied, "Yeah, I decided to try something new." His classmates looked at him curiously but didn't pry any further. Brian was relieved that they didn't seem to suspect anything. Throughout the day, Brian couldn't help but notice the looks he was getting from his classmates and teachers. Some of them looked confused, while others looked curious, but no one said anything to him directly. As he walked home that day, Brian couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. He had taken the first step in expressing himself, and it hadn't been as bad as he had imagined. As the days went by, Brian gradually became more comfortable expressing himself as a girl. He started experimenting with different styles and colors of clothing, and even started wearing makeup. His classmates and teachers slowly got used to his new look and eventually stopped staring. Brian also started to become more confident in himself. He stopped being so introverted and started making more friends. He even started to enjoy being the center of attention. He was finally able to be true to himself, and it felt liberating. But as Brian's confidence grew, so did his curiosity. He started to wonder what it would be like to fully transition into a girl. He knew it would be a long and difficult journey, but he felt like he was ready for it. Brian's mother noticed the changes in her son and knew that he was struggling with something. She could see the conflict in his eyes and knew that he needed to talk to someone. She suggested that he see a therapist, and he agreed. The therapist helped Brian to understand and accept his feelings. She also helped him to explore the different options available to him. Brian decided that he wanted to start hormone replacement therapy, and with the support of his therapist and his mother, he began the process of transitioning into a girl. Brian felt like a weight had been lifted off of his shoulders. He finally felt like he was living his true self, and it was the most liberating feeling in the world. He was finally able to be who he truly was, and it felt amazing. Brian had been living as a girl for a few weeks now, and it was both liberating and terrifying. He loved being able to express himself in a way that felt true to himself, but he was also constantly worried about being found out. He was paranoid that someone would figure out that he was transgender and that they would judge or bully him. Despite these fears, Brian was determined to live his life as a girl. He loved the way he looked and felt, and he was determined to make it work. One day, while he was out shopping, he saw a flyer for a support group for transgender people. He was hesitant to go at first, but he eventually decided to give it a try. The group was made up of people just like him who were all going through the same struggles. They talked about their fears and their struggles, and Brian finally felt like he wasn't alone. He realized that he wasn't the only one going through this, and that it was normal to feel scared and lost. With the support of the group, Brian started to feel more confident in himself. He stopped worrying so much about what other people thought of him, and he began to truly embrace his identity as a girl. He was finally happy, and he was proud of who he was. As the weeks and months passed, Brian continued to grow and change. He made new friends, and he even started dating a boy who was accepting and supportive of him. He was happier than he had ever been, and he knew that he had made the right decision in transitioning. Despite the struggles he had faced, Brian was grateful for the journey he had been on. He had learned so much about himself and about the world, and he was excited to see what the future held for him. He knew that there would be more challenges ahead, but he was ready to face them head-on. As the story comes to an end, there are still some loose threads. Brian's father had not been seen or heard from since Brian came out as transgender. His old schoolmates who had bullied him before had not been seen or heard from either. Despite this, Brian was happy and content with his life, and he was not looking back. He was looking forward to what the future held for him. Brian's mother had arranged for him to meet with a therapist who specialized in gender identity issues, Dr. Harris. Brian was hesitant at first, but his mother was insistent that he needed someone to talk to about his feelings. In their first session, Brian found it easy to open up to Dr. Harris. He told her about his struggles with wanting to express himself as a girl, but feeling too scared and ashamed to do so. He also shared his fear of rejection and discrimination from his family, friends, and society. Dr. Harris listened attentively and assured Brian that he was not alone in his feelings, and that there was nothing wrong with wanting to express oneself in a way that feels true to oneself. Over the next few weeks, Brian and Dr. Harris worked together to explore his feelings and build his confidence. They talked about the different ways he could express himself and the different resources and support groups available to him. Dr. Harris also helped Brian understand that his feelings were not something that he needed to be ashamed of, and that it was important for him to be true to himself. Brian's mother was also an important part of his therapy, and she worked closely with Dr. Harris to support him. Together, they came up with a plan for Brian to start expressing himself as a girl in a safe and controlled environment. It was a slow process, but with the support of his mother and Dr. Harris, Brian started to feel more confident in himself. He began to experiment with different clothing and makeup and started to present as a girl in certain safe spaces. As he grew more comfortable with himself, Brian started to come out to his friends and family. It was not easy, and there were some who struggled to understand, but for the most part, the people in Brian's life were supportive and accepting. In the end, Brian's journey was not without its challenges, but with the love and support of his family, friends, and therapist, he was able to find the courage to express himself as the person he truly was. He was finally able to live his life as the girl he had always felt he was inside. As Brian looked in the mirror, he smiled at the reflection staring back at him. He knew that this was only the beginning of his journey, but he felt more alive and true to himself than ever before. He was ready to face the world as the person he truly was, and he knew that no matter what, he would always have the love and support of the people who mattered most to him. As a 20-year-old, I had a secret love for dressing in women's clothing since I was young. It started with trying on my sister's clothes and has since evolved into purchasing feminine items online and dressing up in my room during the night. One day, I stumbled upon an adorable black Barbie doll set that I knew I had to have. The delicate lace and soft fabric were captivating, and I eagerly awaited its arrival. When the package arrived, I couldn't wait to try on my new purchase. The black and white lace, along with the delicate embroidery, made me feel beautiful and feminine. Since my family was going out for the afternoon, I decided to make it extra special by getting all dolled up and doing something more adventurous inside the house. Before beginning, I made sure to lock all the doors, creating a cozy and intimate space for myself. After washing my face and putting on some moisturizer, I applied my foundation, eyeliner, and black lip gloss. I was thrilled with my reflection and felt confident and beautiful. I took many photos and videos of myself and felt a mix of fear and excitement as I ventured out of my room for the first time fully dressed. I even snuck into my sister's room to grab some of her perfume, which I found to be pleasant. The thrill of being in her space and trying on her things was exhilarating. I decided to take some photos and videos in her room before heading to the living room. Though it was riskier to be in the living room, I couldn't resist the thrill of getting caught. I took a few quick photos and rushed back to my room, feeling relieved to be back in the safety of my space. I decided to try my hand at making a few videos for social media and set up my phone on a tripod. However, I quickly realized that the lighting in the room was too dark, so I peeked outside to ensure no one could see me and opened the curtains to let in more light. In the end, I felt exhilarated and thrilled by my secret adventure. The delicate Barbie doll set and feminine clothing made me feel confident and beautiful, and I couldn't wait for my next secret adventure. Though there was always a risk of being caught, the thrill was worth it. With the improved lighting, I started filming my videos. I tried out different poses and angles, experimenting with different facial expressions and movements. It was challenging at first, but I gradually became more comfortable in front of the camera. I took breaks in between recordings to check how the footage looked and make adjustments as needed. As I continued to film, I started to feel a sense of liberation, as if I was shedding off a layer of inhibition and expressing a side of myself that I had kept hidden for so long. After I finished filming, I spent some time editing the videos and adding some effects and music. When I was satisfied with the final result, I uploaded them to my social media accounts. I was nervous about how people would react, but at the same time, I felt a sense of pride in sharing this part of myself with the world. To my surprise, the response was overwhelmingly positive. People left comments expressing their admiration for my courage and creativity, and some even shared their own experiences of struggling with gender identity or body image. It was heartwarming to see how my videos had touched others and inspired them to be more authentic and true to themselves. From that day on, I made it a point to embrace my femininity and express it openly, both in private and in public. I started incorporating more feminine clothing and accessories into my wardrobe, experimenting with makeup and hairstyles, and even attended some events and gatherings. It was a journey of self-discovery and self-acceptance, and although it wasn't always easy, it was worth it in the end. Looking back on that day when I received the black Barbie doll set, I realized that it was a turning point in my life, a moment when I decided to break free from the constraints of gender norms and embrace my true self. It was a small act of rebellion, but it had a profound impact on my life, allowing me to discover a part of myself that I had never known existed, and for that I am forever grateful. As I continued to film myself, I felt more and more comfortable in front of the camera. It was exciting to see how different angles and poses looked on camera, and I felt that I was truly expressing myself in a way that I had never been able to before. But as the night wore on, my excitement began to wane, and I started to feel guilty and ashamed for what I was doing. I worried about what my family and friends would think if they found out about my secret cross-dressing hobby. Despite my reservations, I couldn't bring myself to stop. It was like a part of me was addicted to the thrill of dressing up and being someone else, even if it was just for a few hours at a time. Over the next few weeks, I continued to indulge in my cross-dressing habit, but I also started to do some research online about what it meant to be transgender. I read stories from people who had struggled with gender dysphoria and had eventually transitioned to living as their true selves. The more I learned, the more I started to question my own gender identity. Was my love of women's clothing just a harmless hobby, or was it the sign that I was meant to be a woman? As I grappled with these questions, I knew that I needed to talk to someone about what I was going through. But I was too scared to tell anyone in my life for fear of being judged or rejected. Eventually, I decided to seek out a therapist who specialized in gender identity issues. It was terrifying to take that first step, but I knew that I needed help if I was ever going to figure out who I truly was. In my first session with my therapist, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. It was such a relief to be able to talk openly and honestly about my feelings, without fear of judgment or ridicule. Over time, I began to explore my gender identity in more depth, and eventually came to the realization that I was transgender. It was a scary and overwhelming realization, but it was also incredibly freeing to finally understand who I was meant to be. Today, I'm living my life as a woman, and while it's not always easy, it's also incredibly rewarding to finally be living as my true self. I'm so grateful for the support of my therapist, my friends and family, and the broader transgender community, who have all helped me to embrace who I truly am. I still vividly remember the day when my friend Eva asked me to do her a favor and wear a matching outfit to her birthday party. It was her 23rd birthday, and she had rented out a mansion to celebrate with a massive party. Eva was my closest friend, and we were both studying nursing in college. As a result, I was always surrounded by women, including my group of friends, who were all girls. Although I had dated a few girls in the past, I was primarily focused on my academics and had never acted on my little crush on Eva. When she called me the day before her party and asked me to wear a matching outfit, I was hesitant at first, not knowing what it would entail. But after Eva assured me that it would be fun, I agreed to do it. On the day of the party, I went to Eva's apartment a few hours before the event. She greeted me at the door with 2 red dresses in her hands, and to my surprise, they were identical. Initially, I was not thrilled with the idea of wearing a dress, but Eva convinced me that it would be a fun experience, and I agreed. Before we could put on the dresses, Eva had some other preparations in mind. She handed me a box of wax strips and asked me to apply them all over my body. At first, I was hesitant, but I decided to go all the way since I was dressing up. I went to the bathroom and waxed my upper body and legs, and it hurt a bit, but it felt freeing at the same time. After waxing, Eva had me put on a hairnet and sit down in her bathroom. She began applying makeup to my face, and I could not help but laugh as she giggled while putting different makeups on me. Eva asked me to pucker my lips, and she applied lipstick, which felt nice on my face, and I was starting to enjoy the experience. Eva finished applying makeup, and attached a blonde wig to my head, which was the same style as her hair, making us look identical. The wig felt a bit itchy on the sides, but it wasn't too bad. Eva then handed me a bra and panties, which I put on, feeling unsure about it all. I finally stepped into the dress, and when Eva saw me, she was so excited that she ran over to give me a hug, exclaiming how hot I looked. We both wore identical dresses and were now blonde twins, but I felt jealous of how she looked in the dress. Eva then helped me put on a pair of 4-inch heels, and we did a few laps around her apartment before heading to the party. Although it felt strange and uncomfortable to walk in heels, I was surprised by how fun it was. Before we left for the party, as we walked out of her apartment building, I started to feel a mix of excitement and nervousness. I had never dressed up as a woman before, and I wasn't sure how people would react. Eva seemed to sense my hesitation and put her arm around me. "Don't worry, you look amazing. And besides, it's just for fun," she said with a smile. We arrived at the mansion where the party was being held, and it was packed with people. Music was blaring and people were dancing and drinking. Eva introduced me to her friends, and they all seemed impressed with our matching outfits. Some even mistook me for a girl and complimented me on how pretty I looked. As the night went on, I started to let loose and have fun. I danced with Eva and her friends, took shots, and even flirted with a few guys who didn't realize I was a man. It was a surreal experience, and I was surprised at how comfortable I felt in my new identity. Towards the end of the night, as people started to leave, Eva grabbed my hand and pulled me towards the photo booth. She wanted to take one last picture of us together. As we stood there posing, she leaned in and gave me a quick kiss on the lips. "Thank you for doing this with me. I had so much fun with you," she whispered. I smiled and gave her a hug. Me too. This was definitely a birthday to remember. As we walked out of the mansion and headed back to her apartment, I couldn't help but think about how much I enjoyed the experience. It had opened up a new side of me that I never knew existed, and although I didn't know what the future held, I knew that I would always cherish that night with Eva. One evening, while browsing the internet at home, I was searching for ebooks and interesting text files to download and read on my laptop. Hotel internet access in Canada was extremely expensive, so I was taking measures to save money. However, most ebook sites charged a fee for downloading files, so I changed my search to include the word free. Suddenly, I found hundreds of sites offering free downloads. I clicked on a link at the top of the search results and quickly skimmed the list of files, downloading a few that caught my interest. Soon, the phone rang and I had to cut my browsing short. The next evening, I found myself in another hotel room with nothing to do. I opened my laptop and started reading one of the ebooks I had downloaded about gardening. Then, I moved on to a story about maids that I had also downloaded, recognizing the first few lines. I had expected it to be a story about the past, when middle-class families had servants. However, to my surprise, the story took a different turn as the main character, a man, was forced to dress in a maid's uniform by his dominant wife. Although I was shocked by the story, I couldn't help but feel intrigued. I ordered room service and took a shower, but the suspense of the story was too much for me. I opened the file again and settled back to read. As I read, I was introduced to a world I had never known existed. I had grown up in a strict Christian family, and the idea of cross-dressing was foreign to me. However, as I read the story, I found myself becoming aroused. That night, I had trouble sleeping as the stories kept running through my mind. Even when I returned home, I couldn't get them out of my head. I spent hours on the internet, reading more and more cross-dressing stories. Eventually, I decided that I wanted to try it for myself. One night, while my wife was away, I poured myself a glass of wine and went upstairs to our bedroom. I opened my wife's lingerie drawer and looked at the silky and lacy garments inside. I hesitated for a moment before closing the drawer, finishing my wine, and taking a shower. I returned downstairs to the computer and continued reading cross-dressing stories. As I read more stories about men cross-dressing, I convinced myself that there was no harm in trying it out. I went back upstairs and opened my wife's lingerie drawer again. This time, I selected a pink satin panty girdle and matching bra. The girdle was made of shiny satin material with elastic inserts. I stepped into it carefully and pulled it up into position. The girdle was very tight, but it felt nice and supportive, just like the men in the stories had described. Looking in the mirror, I could see that the girdle made my waist look slim, and all signs of middle-age spread had disappeared. I was surprised at how much the color of the lingerie mattered to me. As I continued exploring my wife's drawer, I found exactly what I was looking for, except for one item that I assumed my wife was wearing. I couldn't resist trying on her little miracle workers, control top pantyhose that made my legs look smooth and toned. Slipping off the bathrobe, I fastened the matching pink bra, feeling the coolness of the satin against my skin. As I looked at myself in the mirror, I couldn't believe how different I looked. The girdle had transformed my midsection, and the bra gave me a slight curve in my chest. Feeling both excited and nervous, I took a deep breath and reached for a pair of nude stockings. I had watched Ella put them on countless times, so I knew the routine. I rolled them up my legs, taking care not to snag them on my toenails. The feeling of the nylon against my skin was incredibly sensual, and I couldn't help but admire how they made my legs look smooth and shapely. With the stockings in place, I put on a pair of black patent pumps that Ella wore to her office job. The heels felt high, but I steadied myself against the bedpost and walked a few steps, feeling a surge of excitement at the unfamiliar sensation. I stood in front of the mirror, feeling a mix of arousal and guilt. I had never felt this way before, and I wasn't sure what it meant. Was I gay? Did I want to become a woman? Or was this just a harmless experiment that I could keep to myself? As I stood there, lost in thought, I heard a car door slam outside. Ella was home early. My heart raced as I quickly took off the lingerie and stuffed it back in the drawer. I put on my bathrobe and headed downstairs, hoping to act casual. Ella walked in the door, looking stunning in a little black dress. "Hi, darling," she said, kissing me on the cheek. "How was your night alone?" Good, I said, feeling nervous and guilty. "What's wrong?" she asked, sensing something was off. "Nothing, just tired from traveling," I said, trying to sound convincing. As the night wore on, I couldn't stop thinking about the lingerie and how much I wanted to wear it again. Over the next few weeks, I found myself sneaking into Ella's lingerie drawer every chance I got, trying on different pieces and admiring myself in the mirror. Eventually, I knew I had to tell Ella. I couldn't keep this secret any longer. One night, after a few glasses of wine, I blurted out the truth. "I've been trying on your lingerie," I said, feeling embarrassed and ashamed. Ella looked surprised but not angry. "Is that all?" she said, smiling. "I thought you were going to tell me you were having an affair or something." "No, it's just, I don't know, it feels good," I said, feeling relieved to have finally shared my secret. "Well, if it makes you happy, then I don't see the harm in it," she said, putting her hand on my shoulder. Over time, Ella and I talked more about my desire to wear lingerie, and she even bought me some of my own to wear. I realized that my love of lingerie didn't make me gay or trans, but it was simply a part of who I was. Now, years later, I still enjoy wearing lingerie, but it's no longer a secret or a source of shame. I've learned to accept myself for who I am, and my relationship with Ella is stronger than ever. I've come to realize that true love means accepting someone for all their quirks and desires, even if they don't fit society's norms. My name is Carl, and I had an unexpected experience of being transformed into a woman. It all began when I was walking home from work one day, and I came across Marian's salon, which was still open in a shopping center. Marian, the owner of the salon, offered me services to fix my eyebrows and nails, which I declined at first. However, I decided to give it a try as it would only take 10 minutes, and I was already getting home late. Little did I know that this decision would change how I looked entirely. Marian began working on my eyebrows, and Michael started taking care of my nails. After 10 minutes, Marian turned the chair around to show me my reflection in the mirror. To my surprise, I saw that my eyebrows were plucked into two sharp, thin lines, and my nails were painted bright pink. I felt annoyed and explained to Marion that this was not what I wanted. However, Marion thought that I looked great, and I realized that I had been transformed into a woman. After seeing my new feminine look, I was ready to leave the salon as soon as possible. When Marion rang out the total, I couldn't believe my eyes. The amount displayed on the screen was $1,000. I laughed, assuming it was a mistake. However, Marion explained that this was a luxury salon where the cheapest nail polish cost $600 per treatment, and the eyebrow wax was another $300. After fees, the final bill was $1,000. I was outraged and demanded the price to be reduced, but Michael warned me that if I didn't pay, they would call the police. I heard a clicking sound under the desk, and the door to the salon locked. At the salon counter, I stood there with my arms crossed, knowing that I couldn't pay $1,000 for the services. Marion suggested a special package deal where the nails, eyebrows, and a full femme treatment would cost only $200. Although I wasn't sure what the full femme treatment was, I knew that it sounded a lot better than the previous price. I quickly paid with my card, hoping to leave as soon as possible. However, when I tried to open the door, I realized it was still locked. Michael explained that the bundle had to be completed in one visit, and I couldn't leave yet. I was taken to the back room, given a red pair of women's undies, and asked to change. Marion assured me that it was to keep my clothes from getting damaged during the treatment. I thought it was odd, but decided to go along with it. When I came back out, Marion began applying makeup to my face, and Michael shaved my arms and legs. As I was being transformed, I glanced out of the salon window, hoping that no one I knew would pass by and see me. Once my makeup was done, I was completely shaved, and a matching brow was put on me. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I still looked like a man, but I was surprised by how feminine I looked. Then I was taken to the back and fitted in a pink, club-style dress made of leather material. When the dress was secured on me, a blonde wig was glued to my head, making me look completely like a woman. I winked at myself in the mirror and smiled at how I looked. The process of being transformed into a woman was quite pleasant and felt good. When my transformation was complete, Marion told me that I was free to leave the salon. I quickly grabbed my stuff and began walking towards the door. This time the door was unlocked, and I made my way to the bus stop. However, it suddenly dawned on me that I was in danger looking like this. I couldn't walk very fast in my heels, and if someone tried to kidnap me, it would be pretty easy. When the bus came, I noticed that I was the only one there. Luckily, there was no one else on the bus. I was dropped off at my stop and made my way to my apartment. My roommates were sleeping, so they didn't hear or see me coming in. The next few days, I had a weird urge to go back to the salon and be transformed again, and I didn't know why. Just 5 nights later, I found myself walking into the salon late at night. My first experience with cross-dressing occurred during early college. At the time, I had decided to be more outgoing and make as many friends as possible. I had become friends with 2 girls named Kelly and Monica. Kelly was a finance major, while Monica was studying engineering. Meanwhile, I was pursuing economics. It was still early in the school year when Halloween came around. Although our college was not known for throwing big parties, there were several small gatherings held by different social groups. As it turned out, Kelly and Monica were planning their own little Halloween party at a house off campus. One day, Kelly called me and invited me to the women's soccer team's Halloween party. I was thrilled at the prospect and quickly accepted the invitation. However, there was a catch. The party was for girls only. Kelly explained that I would need to come to their dorm first to get ready before we could go to the party. Although I wasn't quite sure what Kelly meant, I was excited to attend the party regardless. I agreed to meet them at 7 p.m. the following day. When I arrived at Kelly and Monica's dorm, Kelly welcomed me with a big smile and thanked me for coming early. However, I soon realized that there was a lot of work to be done. Monica was sitting on the couch, surrounded by various makeup products scattered across the coffee table. Kelly and Monica were already dressed in tight black dresses and had their makeup done. As for me, I had decided to wear a pair of jeans and a collared shirt to the party. I wasn't sure if I was underdressed, but I hoped it would suffice. Little did I know that my cross-dressing journey was about to begin. My heart was racing as Kelly and Monica stepped out in their tight black dresses that complemented their athletic figures. I felt a little nervous, and there was a moment of silence before Monica started speaking. Okay, so if it wasn't clear before, the women's soccer Halloween party is for girls only. That means you can only go if you look like a girl. I paused for a minute and said, "How would I look like a girl when I'm a guy?" Kelly giggled and said, "This is where the magic of makeup and some feminization comes in." Monica started giggling too. I took a deep breath and realized what was going on. They were going to dress me as a girl. I got up and said, "I have to go." Kelly yelled, "Stop, stop. It will be fun, I promise. It is only for the night, and no one is even going to know. I promise we will do a good job making you a believable girl." I thought for a minute and sat back down. This couldn't be that bad, maybe even a little fun. Who knows? I said, "Okay, let's just get it over with." Kelly and Monica jumped up and down in excitement. I was ready for my makeover. The first thing that happened was shaving my legs and arms. Kelly and Monica took me to the bathroom and gently shaved my arms and legs. I thought it was going to hurt, but it kind of felt nice. Next, they gave me a yellow dress and told me to change into it. They left the bathroom and waited for me to change. I examined the dress. It was a short yellow dress with lots of frills. I took off my shirt and jeans and stepped into the dress. I slid it up to my chest and tried to figure out how to latch it in the back. The material felt very smooth against my skin, and I liked how it moved as my body moved. I couldn't figure out how to latch it and called for Monica and Kelly to come back in. They immediately opened the door and burst out laughing. "OMG," they said, "you look so good." I was fairly skinny for my age, so the dress seemed to fit perfectly on me. They quickly helped me connect the back of the dress, adjusted it a little bit, and then brought me back into the living room. They sat me down on the couch and began doing my makeup. First, they applied some foundation that matched my skin tone. They then applied blush and concealer. Next, they had me look up while they put mascara on me. Finally, they applied lipstick and took a step back. Kelly said, "Wow, he really does look like a girl." Monica laughed and said, "Yes, he looks very girly." Kelly left and returned with a mirror. She put the mirror in my hands. I looked at myself and was amazed by how feminine I looked. My facial features looked so exaggerated. Monica stepped behind me and slid a brown wig over my head. My hair was super short, so the wig completely concealed everything. Monica adjusted the wig a little bit, and I looked in the mirror again. Wow, I thought to myself, I actually look like a girl. Kelly asked, "Do you like it?" I paused for a minute and said, "Kind of." She said, "Good." Kelly and Monica helped me stand up and brought a pair of heels from the closet. They held me as I slowly put on each of the 4-inch party heels. Monica bent down and fastened the heels on, and out of everything, the heels definitely made me feel the most feminine. I walked a few steps in them and realized the challenge I would be facing. Monica and Kelly said it was time to go, and all three of us left the dorm, briskly walking across campus. It was close to 9 p.m., and there were plenty of students around. A few guys looked at me as I walked past, but overall, no one seemed to bat an eye. All three of us got in Mary's car and drove off campus. Within a few minutes, we arrived at the house, and I was escorted out of the vehicle. I kind of felt like a celebrity, and Kelly and Monica were my bodyguards. Monica opened the door to the house, and I walked in. My heart stopped. The house was packed with around 30 girls. Everyone turned when I walked in and started clapping. I was so confused and felt my knees buckle in nervousness. Monica and Kelly stepped in after me, and Mary yelled, "I would like to introduce you all to Adriana. She is one of the hottest girls on campus." Everyone cheered, and I turned to Kelly and whispered, "I can't believe you told everyone." Mary responded, "Haha, don't worry. The soccer team loves you, and your secret will be safe with all of us." The rest of the night was a blur. Many of the girls took turns coming up to me and admiring my dress. They would often feel the fabric and compliment me on how great my makeup was. I was always telling them to thank Kelly and Monica. I kind of liked being the center of attention and enjoyed everyone looking at me. I made a lot of friends at the party and was glad I went. Around 4 a.m., the three of us got in Mira's car and drove back to campus. They took me back to their dorm and helped me change out of the dress and heels. My feet hurt a lot from the heels, but it was worth it. They used makeup and pads to remove all the makeup from my face. The wig was not looking in good shape since I had danced all night, but Kelly said it was okay since it was a cheap wig. I changed back into my normal clothes and thanked Kelly and Monica for all of the fun. I gathered my things and walked back to my place. On the way home, Kelly and Monica sent me some pictures of myself that were taken at the party. I was surprised by how I looked. If I saw the girl version of myself on campus, I would think she was very hot and would probably try to get her number. I hope the pictures never got out. Once I arrived at my place, I laid down and quickly fell asleep. As I walked past the storefront, my heart pounded beneath my facade of nonchalance. After several passes, I finally mustered the courage to enter the glass doors. Being several states away from anywhere anyone might recognize me, I took solace in the fact that there were no other customers in the store. I was instantly acknowledged by the woman behind the main counter. Her name tag said Amanda, and she was a redhead in her mid-20s, nicely dressed. As the manager of a bridal shop, she was probably thinking that I was a fiancé of one of her customers, there to make a last-minute purchase. My first nervous statement was, "I'm looking for bridal gowns in the 12 to 16 range, and I was wondering if you might have a sale rack." She looked somewhat confused as she led me over to a rack along the wall with several dresses covered in plastic. "Here are our current sale items. Is she looking for anything in particular?" I nervously replied, looking away. "Oh, it's not for someone else. It's for me," I said, expecting the cold shoulder and to be told that the bridal shop didn't serve male clients. Instead, the woman replied, "Oh, how interesting. Is this for a masquerade?" "Well, sort of," I answered, making up a story as I went along. "I lost a bet with my wife, and my end of the deal is to dress as a bride for one weekend. And your wife made you come here alone. That must have taken some courage," she said. My story was now fixed, and there was no turning back. I had an excuse that offered an easier explanation than that I was a crossdresser, and I now had an opportunity to expand my adventure a bit. Yes, my wife gave me specific instructions to pick out the most feminine gown and also to purchase matching shoes, underwear. She wants me to be a bride on Saturday and stay in character for the rest of the weekend. I'm suspicious that she's going to make me go out in public on Sunday, I said, suddenly spilling my fantasies into my story and wondering if I was overdoing it. Amanda didn't seem to catch on, though. "This will be fun. Wednesdays are always a slow day anyway. It sounds like you're going to go away with the whole store. We do have a lingerie section, so we should be able to help you with everything she wants for you," she said. With that, we redirected our attention to the rack of bridal gowns. There were 4 choices in my size range. Amanda measured me beforehand to find that I was a size 12, something I already knew. 2 were modern off-the-shoulder designs, which I didn't like, and 2 were more traditional designs. My eyes were instantly drawn to one with an all-over lace bodice with lace sleeves and a very full tulle skirt. Amanda asked me if I would like to try it on, and of course I agreed. Amanda hung the gown in a fitting room, and my heart was beating even harder than before. Then Amanda said, "You know, if your wife is making you buy the undergarments, you might as well try those on at the same time." Most of our brides don't try on the gown and then purchase the foundation garments later. I stammered a positive response as Amanda led me to the lingerie section. I was on sensory overload just following her lead. "Let's see first. You're going to need a panty worthy of a beautiful bride." I could see she was having fun with this. My face was quite red, shaved if you want to achieve a smoother look under the hosiery. I felt a mixture of embarrassment and excitement at the suggestion, knowing that it would add to the authenticity of my disguise. "Do you have any suggestions on how to do that?" I asked tentatively. Amanda nodded with a smile. "We actually offer waxing services here, if you're interested. It's quick and relatively painless." My heart raced at the prospect of undergoing such a procedure, but I couldn't resist the temptation to fully embrace my feminine alter ego. "Sure, why not?" I replied, trying to sound casual. Amanda led me to a private room at the back of the store, where a skilled esthetician quickly and efficiently removed the hair from my legs. The sensation was uncomfortable at first, but as the waxing progressed, I found myself becoming more relaxed and even enjoying the experience. When the procedure was over, I examined my newly hairless legs in the mirror, feeling a sense of satisfaction at the sight. Amanda appeared beside me, holding a pair of high heels. "These would go perfectly with your dress," she said, holding them out. I slipped my feet into the shoes, feeling a rush of excitement as I wobbled slightly on the unfamiliar heels. "Thank you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. As I stepped out of the room, Amanda handed me a white satin robe to wear over my undergarments. "You can put on the dress now," she said, gesturing towards the fitting room. I hesitated for a moment, feeling a sudden rush of nerves at the thought of being fully dressed as a bride in front of another person. But the excitement and curiosity won out, and I slipped off the robe and stepped into the gown. Amanda helped me zip up the back of the dress, then stepped back to admire the finished look. "You look beautiful," she said, her eyes shining with genuine admiration. I blushed at the compliment, feeling a surge of confidence and pride in my appearance. As I gazed at my reflection in the mirror, I realized that this experience was about more than just fulfilling a bet or indulging in a fantasy. It was about exploring a new side of myself and discovering the freedom and excitement that came with embracing a different identity. With a smile on my face, I stepped out of the fitting room, ready to continue my adventure as a blushing bride. Amanda handed me a razor and shaving cream, saying, "I can give you some privacy if you prefer, but if you're not comfortable shaving yourself, I can help you with that too." I was initially embarrassed, but I quickly realized that I had come this far and didn't want to back out now. "I think I'll need your help," I said, handing her the razor. Amanda helped me shave my legs and then showed me how to put on the pantyhose without ripping them. I couldn't believe how much I was enjoying this experience. Next, Amanda helped me pick out a pair of white satin pumps with a small heel that matched the dress perfectly. She also suggested a garter belt and stockings to complete the look. I agreed, and she found a set that matched the lace pattern on the dress. When I finally put on the dress, I felt transformed. The lace bodice hugged my chest, and the full skirt swished around my legs as I moved. Amanda adjusted the fit and then handed me a full-length mirror. I couldn't believe how beautiful I looked. As I walked out of the dressing room, Amanda's eyes widened in surprise. "Wow," she said, "you look amazing. Your wife is a lucky woman." I blushed at the compliment, but felt proud of myself for pulling this off. Amanda rang up the total, and I winced at the price, but I didn't regret it. This experience had been worth every penny. As I walked out of the store, I felt a newfound confidence and sense of freedom. I had pushed myself out of my comfort zone and discovered a new side of myself that I never knew existed. I couldn't wait to see the look on my wife's face when she saw me in the dress. During my puberty, I started experimenting with different things like most teenagers do, both good and bad. However, I was always fascinated by what my sister wore, and I often wondered what it would be like to wear her clothes. Over time, my interest grew, and I secretly wanted to take something from her room. At first, I was too scared, and I would often get the urge to go to her room, but then chickened out. It took me a year to build the courage to take something. When I did, I took some of her underwear, and it made me feel empowered. I hid it for a long time and sometimes didn't wear anything for months, and sometimes I wore them every day, but my sister knew something was up. I started with just trying on her undies, but quickly graduated into trying on her dresses, lingerie, high heels, etc. It made me realize who I really was, and there was so much freedom and femininity flowing through me. I never for 1 second thought that she even suspected me of this, and I'd always put all her clothes back exactly as I found them, but looking back, I should have just bought some online instead of using hers. One morning, I was in for a surprise when I went downstairs for breakfast as usual. My sister and mother were standing in front of the table with my mother's hands on her hips and a look that could kill on her face. She asked me once and once only if I had something to confess to her and my sister. She warned me that if I lied, I wouldn't get a second chance. I had no idea what was going on and didn't know what to say. My heart started to pound as I stood there, not knowing what to do. My mother then pulled out a pair of undies from her pocket that I'd instantly recognized as being my sister's. My sister started to cry, telling my mother that she hated wearing her clothes because she knew that I had worn them before her. She wanted my mother to punish me and egged her on. My mother then said that if I wanted to dress like a girl in private, then I would also dress like one in public. I almost collapsed in shock. Before I knew it, my mother was leading me by the ear upstairs to my sister's room, and my sister followed behind. When we got to the bedroom, my mother dragged me to a chair and made me sit down, warning me not to move for the next couple of hours. As I sat there, I heard my sister and mother whispering. Then my sister went to a drawer of hers and took out a bunch of clothes. My mother told me that since I like to dress up, I better do it now with the clothes they supplied. However, my sister added several things like a bra and nylon stockings, which I had never worn before. Beginning at the bottom, I was told to put on a lacy pair of pink panties on top of this. My sister helped me put on a garter belt and a pair of black nylons to hide any signs of body hair. She then handed me a bra and stuffed it with Kleenex. My mother pulled out a very short black mini skirt from the closet and instructed me to wear it. On top of that, a white blouse was added that showed off my new bra. The mini skirt was so short that you could see the tops of my stockings. I started to cry and beg for mercy, saying I would never do this again, but deep inside, I felt excitement. My sister then surprised me by giving me a pair of very high heels, about 4 inches high, which were tight and uncomfortable. Finally, my sister and mother applied a little bit of makeup and curled and fluffed up my hair for about half an hour. When they were done, my sister handed me a mirror, and I couldn't believe what I saw. Tears streamed down my face as I begged for forgiveness. However, deep down, I cried because I looked pretty. My mother's words shattered my illusion, as she reminded me that the lesson had only just begun. She grabbed me by the ear and dragged me downstairs. My sister, who was now laughing at my predicament, followed us to the car. On the way to school, my mother made sure that everyone saw me dressed up like a girl. She warned me that if I didn't come back the same way, I would never be allowed to dress like a boy again. I swallowed hard as my sister pulled me out of the car. I prayed that no one would recognize me. But as soon as we stepped out of the car, my sister yelled at her friends to come and see her brother. I tried to run, but my sister had a tight grip on my hand. I was surrounded by my sister's friends, and my sister then pulled up my skirt, showing everyone the lingerie I was wearing. They laughed like crazy, and I couldn't do anything but cry. One of the girlfriends called out to my sister and said that they were all going to call me Tina from now on. Another girl then said that she had an idea, and before I knew it, all the girls were grabbing me and manhandling me towards the woman's washroom. Once I was in there, I was pinned down on my stomach. They said, "This will really let him know what it's like." They opened their purses and took out lipstick, mascara, tampons, and even small ropes. I wondered what the ropes were for, but I had no time to think because, while they all had me pinned down, they'd put so much makeup on my face. I really felt like a doll that was being painted all over the place, a very feminine doll though. They really showed me what I was made for, and although it was a very strange situation, it also got me very excited as well. Initially, I felt humiliated, but the longer it went on, the more enjoyment I got. When I was in 9th grade, I came home from school and noticed that my mother had left the laundry basket on my bed. It was her signal for me to put the clothes away in my drawers and bring down any dirty clothes I had. I started to put everything away, but when I came across one of my older sister Gil's panties, I couldn't resist holding them in my hand and feeling their silky texture. As a typical 9th grader, my mind raced with naughty thoughts, and I found myself wanting to try them on to see how they felt. I locked my door, closed all the shades, and put them on. The feeling was so different from what I usually wore, and I couldn't resist wearing them for the rest of the day. One night, when we were all going out to dinner to celebrate my father's birthday, I wore the panties under my clothes without anyone knowing. I was excited all night, and the thought of wearing panties just like the waitress serving us made it all the more thrilling. Days passed, and I found myself wearing Gil's undergarments more and more often. It was so exciting that I started to push the envelope and try something more daring. I snuck into Gil's room when no one was home, dug through her underwear drawer, and found one of her bras. I stuffed it with some of my socks and put it on, wearing it under a white t-shirt. It was so exciting, and I almost came in my pants, but I felt ashamed and embarrassed at the same time. I knew I was hooked and would do it again, so I kept wearing Gil's undergarments every day. I even wore her panties to bed one night, but they were starting to smell, so I reluctantly put them in the wash. I waited a few days and then dug through Gil's drawers when I had a chance to find them or a similar pair. I also found an old pair of my mom's shoes that I could barely get on, but they were too small. As time went by, I kept dressing up, sometimes just with the panties and sometimes in a full outfit. I even stole a pair of pantyhose from the laundry room and started wearing those too. The cotton crotch turned me on for some reason. I wanted more though, so I started wearing one of Gil's blouses and an old red plaid skirt of hers that she didn't wear anymore. I loved the feeling of the soft material swishing against my pantyhose and sending shivers up and down my spine. It turned me on so much. One day, even in full dress, it didn't seem like enough. I wanted more. Nobody was home, so for the first time, I left my room dressed as a girl. I was so afraid that someone would look in the windows and see me, but I got into Gil's room safely and took a couple of her dresses. It felt wonderful when I was fully dressed, and I read a book on my bed like a girl would. I slid forward a bit and felt some warmth between my legs. I moved back and forth a couple of times, and then I climaxed. It was stupid of me, but thinking of myself as a girl made me really turned on and made me climax so easily. I was excited but felt guilty and ashamed. After rummaging through my sister's closet, I found many blouses, skirts, and dresses. I even found a wig and tried it on. It was a little too big for my head, but it looked pretty good. I twirled in front of the mirror, feeling more feminine than ever before. But just as I was about to take off the wig and change back into my regular clothes, I heard the front door open. My heart leaped into my throat. Someone was home. I quickly gathered up the clothes and wig and hid them under the bed. I took off the dress and slipped into my jeans just as my mom came up the stairs. "Hey, Jack," she said, smiling at me. "How was your day?" "Fine," I said, trying to sound casual. "Where's Gil?" she asked. "I don't know," I said, shrugging. "Maybe she's out with her friends." My mom nodded and went into her bedroom. I breathed a sigh of relief and quickly put everything back where I found it. After that close call, I decided to be more careful. I still dressed up in secret, but only when I was sure no one else was home. I even started buying my own panties and bras online, so I wouldn't have to keep stealing my sister's. But as much as I enjoyed dressing up, I couldn't help feeling guilty about it. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stop myself. And as time went on, I started to crave it more and more. It was like a drug, and I was addicted. Eventually, I started experimenting with makeup. I bought some cheap eyeshadow and lipstick and practiced applying it in secret. I even started plucking my eyebrows to make them thinner and more feminine. It was a dangerous game, and I knew it. But I couldn't help myself. I was in too deep. And as much as I tried to resist, I knew that I would keep dressing up in secret for as long as I could get away with it. Ethan always felt like he was leading a double life. During the day, he was a typical college student attending lectures and participating in discussions. But at night, he would slip into a secret world where he could be himself. He loved to cross-dress, put on his girl clothes, and enjoy feeling like a different person. He had always been a little self-conscious about his appearance, but with his girl clothes on, he felt like he could conquer the world. One of his favorite places to go was the college library. It was a place where he could be alone, and he would regularly go into a quiet corner and slip into his girl clothes. The library had a number of small study rooms, each with an individual study desk and sides that provided some privacy. Ethan would sit down at one of these desks and do his studying while cross-dressed. It was a quiet and peaceful place, and he felt safe and comfortable there. However, there were times when his peaceful study sessions were interrupted. Occasionally, someone would come into the room to study, and Ethan would have to sit there until they left or risk being seen. People were less tolerant back then, and Ethan was afraid of what might happen if someone discovered his secret. He would sit nervously at his desk, trying to look as normal as possible, hoping that the other person would leave soon. One day, someone asked him for a pen, and Ethan's heart began to race. He didn't want to reveal his secret, but he also didn't want to seem rude. He hesitantly reached into his bag and handed the pen to the person, holding his breath as he did so. The person thanked him and went back to their own study. Ethan was relieved, but also a little disappointed that he didn't have the chance to show off his cross-dressed appearance. Despite the occasional interruption, Ethan continued to go to the library and cross-dress while studying. It was a place where he could be himself, and he loved the freedom and excitement that came with it. He would twirl around in front of the mirror, admiring the way his skirt flowed around him, feeling confident and proud of who he was. The thrill of cross-dressing and studying at the library was not enough for Ethan. He wanted to take things further, to express himself more fully, so he started to experiment with makeup and wigs. He would spend hours in front of the mirror, trying different looks, different colors, and different styles. At first, Ethan was nervous about being caught. He was afraid that someone would see him, that they would judge him, or worse, that they would tell others. But as he continued to explore his cross-dressing, he found that he was becoming more confident, more comfortable in his own skin. Ethan started to wear his girl clothes and makeup outside of his home, going to the mall or the park. He was always careful, always looking over his shoulder, but he was also exhilarated. He felt like he was leading a double life, and he loved it. One day, Ethan decided to take the ultimate step and go out in public as a girl. He chose a cute summer dress, a blonde wig, and applied his makeup with care. He was nervous but also excited. He took a deep breath and stepped outside, ready to face the world. As he walked down the street, Ethan felt a rush of adrenaline. He was amazed at how different the world looked through his new eyes. He was no longer invisible, no longer just another guy in the crowd. He was a girl, and everyone was looking at him. Ethan's love for cross-dressing continued to grow, and he found himself slipping into his girl clothes more and more often. He would spend hours in front of the mirror, perfecting his makeup and hair and admiring himself. He loved how he looked and how he felt when he was dressed as a girl. He felt more confident and free, and he was finally able to express himself in a way that he never could before. One day, Ethan made the decision to take the next step and go out in public dressed as a girl. He put on his best dress and shoes, a wig, and applied his makeup with care. When he was finished, he looked in the mirror and was shocked at how beautiful he looked. He felt like a completely different person, and he was ready to face the world. Ethan walked out of his apartment and started down the street. His heart raced with excitement and nervousness. He was amazed at how comfortable he felt in his own skin, and he couldn't help but smile as he walked. People were looking at him, but he didn't care. He was finally able to be himself, and he was going to enjoy every moment of it. As the years went by, Ethan became more confident in his cross-dressing. He started to wear more elaborate outfits and even began wearing makeup and a wig. He would often go to the library in full attire, not just to study, but also to express himself and feel free in his own skin. People were more accepting of his lifestyle now, and he was even complimented on his fashion choices. He had found a community of like-minded individuals, and he was no longer ashamed of who he was. One day, Ethan was at the library surrounded by his friends and fellow cross-dressers. They were laughing and chatting, enjoying each other's company and discussing their latest fashion finds. Suddenly, one of the librarians approached the group and asked if they would like to participate in a fashion show at the library. Ethan was hesitant at first, but his friends encouraged him to do it. They said that it would be a great opportunity to show the world that there was more to them than just their clothing, and that they should be proud of who they were. Ethan agreed, and the group participated in the fashion show. It was a huge success, and people from all over the city came to see it. Ethan walked down the runway, wearing a stunning red gown and a beautiful wig. He felt like a queen, and the audience was cheering and clapping for him. He finally felt like he had found his place in the world. In the end, Ethan's loved ones were incredibly supportive. They told him that they loved him no matter what, and that they would always be there for him. From that day forward, Ethan was finally able to be himself. He was no longer hiding who he was, and he was finally able to live life on his own terms. He was proud of who he was, and he wouldn't change a thing. As Jack grew up, he always felt like he was different from the other boys. While they enjoyed sports and rough and tumble play, Jack preferred quieter hobbies like drawing and reading. Unfortunately, this made him the target of teasing from his older brothers and cousins, who would mock him for being too sensitive or too girly. Even his own mother made comments about him needing to toughen up if he wanted to be taken seriously in life. At first, Jack tried to brush off the teasing and ignore the comments. But over time, the constant taunting wore him down. He felt like he was trapped in a body that didn't fit, and he didn't know how to escape. He started to question himself and wondered if there was something truly wrong with him. One day, Jack's curiosity got the better of him, and he snuck into his mother's closet to try on some of her clothes. He was fascinated by the way the high heels made him look taller and more graceful, and he felt a newfound confidence that he had never experienced before. He started to enjoy the way he felt when he was dressed up, and he didn't want that feeling to end. When his mother suggested they go shopping for a new dress for him, Jack was hesitant at first, but the excitement building up inside of him was too strong to resist, and he agreed to go. When they arrived at the store, he was in awe of all the colors and styles to choose from. His mother helped him pick out the perfect dress, a beautiful blue one with a full skirt and a bow in the back. When he looked in the mirror, he was amazed at what he saw. He looked like a completely different person, and he loved it. This was Jack's moment of discovery. He loved being dressed up as a girl, and he was going to enjoy every moment of it. He finally realized that he didn't have to conform to the expectations of others, and that he could be true to himself. So he decided to take things to the next level and embrace his new identity as a cross-dresser. Jack started experimenting with his mother's clothes, trying out different styles and looks. He found that he really enjoyed the process of getting dressed up and loved how it made him feel. One day, he came across a local cross-dressing community and was thrilled to find that there were others like him. He started attending their events and meeting other cross-dressers who were supportive and accepting of him. They taught him about makeup, fashion, and how to walk in heels. Jack felt like he had finally found a place where he belonged and was able to be himself without judgment. As Jack continued to explore his new identity, he became more confident and daring. He started to dress up more frequently, even venturing outside of his house in full cross-dressing attire. He found that the world was a lot more accepting than he had initially thought, and he received compliments and admiration from strangers. He was finally living life on his own terms, and he felt happy and fulfilled. Jack's mom was his biggest supporter, always encouraging him to be true to himself and embrace his love for cross-dressing. One day, Jack gathered the courage to go to a local cross-dressing meetup group. He was nervous at first, but as soon as he arrived, he felt a sense of belonging. He met other people who were just like him, and they welcomed him with open arms. They showed him new styles and gave him tips on how to make his outfits even better. Finally, Jack realized that he didn't have to be ashamed of his love for cross-dressing. He learned to embrace it and find confidence in his own skin. He stopped caring about what others thought of him and started living life. Jack had finally found his true self through cross-dressing and was living his life with a newfound sense of confidence and freedom. He no longer felt ashamed of who he was and was proud of the person he had become. With the support of his mother and his community, he continued to explore his love for cross-dressing and became more and more daring in his outfits. As time went on, Jack's confidence grew, and he began to experiment with more daring looks. He would wear bold colors and patterns, and even started wearing high heels regularly. He learned to walk confidently in them, and loved the way they made him feel taller and more elegant. He also started wearing makeup more often, and learned how to apply it to accentuate his features. Jack's love for cross-dressing even spilled over into his professional life. He started dressing up in feminine outfits to work, and surprisingly, his colleagues were supportive and accepting of him. He received compliments on his outfits, and some even asked him for fashion advice. Jack realized that people were more accepting than he had initially thought, and that being true to himself was the best thing he could do. In the local cross-dressing community, Jack became a role model for others who were struggling with their own identities. He was always willing to lend a listening ear and offer advice to those who needed it. He helped others to embrace their love for cross-dressing and to find the confidence to be themselves. Jack found a sense of purpose in helping others and was proud of the impact he was making in the lives of those around him. Through his journey of self-discovery, Jack learned that being true to oneself is the key to happiness. He found his passion in cross-dressing and embraced it with open arms. He learned to ignore the negative comments of others and instead focused on the positive feedback he received from those who supported him. Jack's story serves as an inspiration to others who may be struggling to find their true selves, and he remains a shining example of confidence, bravery, and self-love. Gloria was in a loving relationship with Eric, her boyfriend of 3 years. They were each other's everything, and their relationship was built on trust and honesty. However, one day, while tidying up Eric's closet, Gloria stumbled upon a secret that would shake the foundation of their relationship. She found a long, silky skirt in a deep shade of purple, unlike anything Eric had ever worn. Gloria was shocked and couldn't understand why her boyfriend would have a skirt in his closet. She felt like she had been hit in the stomach, and her thoughts raced with possibilities of infidelity and deceit. She was left feeling confused and hurt, unable to comprehend why the person she loved and trusted the most could be hiding something from her. Gloria confronted Eric, who was sitting on the couch watching TV, holding up the skirt and demanding an explanation. Eric's expression changed from calm to panic as he saw the skirt in Gloria's hands. Gloria accused him of cheating, and Eric struggled to find an explanation. He tried to reassure her, but Gloria was inconsolable. She felt like her world had been turned upside down, and she couldn't understand why Eric would keep something like this from her. Over the next few days, Gloria struggled to shake off the feeling of betrayal and confusion. She didn't know what to make of the skirt that she had found in Eric's closet, and she couldn't help but think that he was keeping secrets from her. On their next date, Gloria confronted Eric about the skirt. They were sitting in a quiet Italian restaurant, sipping red wine and picking at their pasta when she finally mustered up the courage to speak. "Eric, I need to talk to you about something," she said, her voice quivering slightly. Eric's expression changed, and for a moment, Gloria thought that she had finally uncovered his secret. But instead of confessing, he simply looked down at his plate and pushed his food around with his fork. Gloria's heart sank. "Eric, please talk to me," she said. "I need to know what's going on." For a long time, Eric was silent, and Gloria thought that he was going to brush her off and refuse to talk. But then he took a deep breath and looked up at her. "Gloria, I have something to tell you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm addicted to cross-dressing." Gloria's eyes widened in shock, and for a moment, she was speechless. She had never heard of such a thing before, and she had no idea how to react. "What do you mean you're addicted to cross-dressing?" she asked, her voice shaking. "It's something that I've been struggling with for a long time," Eric said. "I love wearing women's clothing, and it makes me feel beautiful and free, but I know that it's not socially acceptable, and I've been trying to hide it from everyone." After Gloria found out about Eric's addiction to cross-dressing, she was feeling confused and unsure of what to do. She loved Eric deeply, but the thought of him cross-dressing was unsettling to her. She decided to talk to some of her close friends about it to get a different perspective. Gloria read articles, watched videos, and even joined online forums where people openly discussed their experiences with cross-dressing. The more she learned, the more she began to realize that it was a legitimate form of self-expression and a way for people to express their gender identity. With a newfound understanding and acceptance of cross-dressing, Gloria felt more confident in her relationship with her boyfriend. She was still a little uneasy about the idea, but she was willing to work through her feelings and support her boyfriend in his journey. Gloria set up a date with Eric to talk things over and see where they stood. They met at a quiet park, sitting on a bench and looking out at the calm lake. She took a deep breath and started the conversation. "I want to talk about what happened," she said. "I've been doing some research, and I want to understand more about cross-dressing and why it's important to you." Her boyfriend looked relieved and grateful for her willingness to listen. "It's a part of who I am," he said. "It's not something I can ignore or hide away. Wearing women's clothing makes me feel beautiful and confident. It's a way for me to express my gender identity." Gloria listened as her boyfriend opened up to her, sharing his experiences and feelings. She could see the passion and love in his eyes as he spoke, and she knew that this was a part of him that she needed to accept and embrace. By the end of the conversation, Gloria and her boyfriend had both come to a new understanding and acceptance of each other. They left the park with a renewed commitment to their relationship, ready to navigate the challenges that lay ahead. As the days passed, Gloria and Eric talked more and more about his cross-dressing. Eric was finally able to open up to her about the reason why he had always felt drawn to women's clothing and why it was such an important part of his life. Gloria was able to understand and accept Eric's feelings, and they were able to move forward as a couple. However, the road ahead was not always easy. There were still many people in their lives who did not understand or accept Eric's cross-dressing, and the couple faced many challenges as they tried to navigate these relationships. But despite the difficulties, Gloria and Eric remained committed to each other, and they supported each other through it all. As they worked through their challenges, Gloria and Eric came to appreciate each other even more. Gloria learned to love and accept all parts of Eric, including his cross-dressing, and Eric learned to be more open and confident about his true self. They found that their love for each other was stronger than ever and that nothing could stand in their way. One day, Gloria and Eric decided to take a trip to a cross-dressing retreat where Eric could fully embrace his love for women's clothing in a supportive and accepting environment. They had an amazing time, and Gloria was struck by how happy and free Eric was when he was cross-dressed. As they returned home from their trip, Gloria and Eric knew that they had found a new level of understanding and acceptance for each other. They were more in love than ever, and they were excited for their future together. From that day forward, Gloria and Eric remained steadfast in their love for each other, and they faced whatever challenges came their way with determination and understanding. They proved to everyone that love truly knows no bounds, and that there is nothing that can stand in the way